Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to our first episode of Talking MotoGP for the brand new year, 2024. And Paul, my colleague, joining me once again, my partner in crime in terms of Talking MotoGP. Paul, how are you keeping?
Yeah, Rob, all good. Thank you very much. Unlike you, we're suffering from a bit of a heat wave here. I don't actually have to go get my hoodie and my puffer jacket out right now, but yeah, otherwise all good. And welcome to everyone who's tuning in. And let's hope that 2024, for whatever your field is the best year that you have. And I can tell you what, MotoGP is shaping up to be something proper for this year.
Yeah, it's going to be. You can't help but get excited. And we were talking just off air now, saying when MotoGP ended last year, you kind of think, what are we going to do for 3 months or 4 months, whatever it is? How are we going to survive? And you blink, and here we are again. Testing's done, and we're less than a couple of weeks away from racing. So lots to talk about. A lot of people already tuning in. Yvonne Pretorius, Sean Clarkson, Daryl Holmes, Wayne Taylor, Nicole Breert, as always from Cape Town, Sean Wilders, Al Camino, one of our big fans that always joins in, Warwick Evans, Jacques Claessens, Luca Jefferson, of course, the established name that is now Luca Jefferson. He's just everywhere on social media and in terms of following us. So hello to everybody. Mariska Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining us. And it's not just hello Rob anymore, it's hello Rob and Paul. So Paul,
Good evening, everyone.
I'm going to tell you what I told the Binder brothers. Stick with me, I'll make you famous.
There we go. And also just repeating, I don't see any of the comments, so I'm not a rude guy. I just can't comment on what I can't see.
No, so that's my role, is to direct. So I'll be keeping up to
100%.
date with all of that. Stephen Golgoxi from the ZX10 Masters Cup, who had a massive field out at the first round at Red Star Raceway. So well done to everyone involved there. But yeah, let's jump straight into it. Paul, I don't want to. Well, probably the biggest shake-up in the MotoGP Championship that we've seen in a long time, mainly down to the big news of Marc Marquez leaving. We've spoken about it. It's been well documented, so we're not going to go too much into that. Then the big move of Luca Marini to Honda. There were a couple of big moves heading into 2024 after we thought it was going to be a quiet season in terms of musical chairs, and that it kind of blew up in our face. We've now, after getting a small glimpse of testing at the end of last year at the Valencia test, we've now since had full proper Sepang test, couple of days out there. The rookies and test teams getting a bit more test time there. And of course, now the most recent Qatar testing, a couple of weeks ahead of the race meeting. So lots to talk about. We're just going to pull apart from those tests. And I know it's testing, and I know everyone says it's testing. You can't take too much from testing until the lights go out. You don't know. But you can still you can pull apart quite a bit. And one thing you can pull apart from the testing that's happened so far is that Ducati, everyone's making steps, but Ducati just, as soon as you think, it must be so frustrating for KTM and all of them, because as soon as you think, yes, we've spent 5 billion and we've found 0.2 of a second, yes, Ducati go zoop, and it seems like it's happening again.
Yeah, most certainly, Rob. So I think the big thing we're going to take out of the testing, and as you said, it's only testing, but you can read a lot into it. The big thing is that everybody has made huge strides from I'm going to say the front Honda and Yamaha. Just look at Yamaha's top speed was very good, but I'll tell you a little aside to that later on. Everyone's made big steps. You look at the testing times, all the lap records were obliterated. Yes, we also understand 3 days of testing, there's so much rubber on the track gets faster and faster. So maybe it's not quite a true reflection, but everybody improved. But then, like you say, so did Ducati. And I think it would have been nice if everybody improved by 10% and Ducati improved by 1%. But it might just be a case of everybody's improved by 5 or 6% and Ducati have improved by 10%. Because listening to Pecco's comments, he says this new bike is fantastic. So it's definitely an issue, but I think looking at the times and how testing's gone over the Sepang and Qatar test, I don't think it's a cut and dry thing that Pecco's going to win. I think we're going to have 5 Ducatis, throw Brad in the mix. Will there be anyone else? I don't think Alacia and Maverick are going to be good enough for a whole year, but certainly I think we're going to have by mid-season, we'll probably have the top 4, and they'll be there at the end. But I don't think there's going to be much in it for the whole season, judging by the testing times.
Yeah, the scary thought is, especially like at Sepang, the pace Martin was able to get after like 10 laps. And then Pecco's a slow builder. Pecco is like a Brad. He chips away at it, and he gets all the pieces of the puzzle in place before he really puts a time attack in. Martin's pace was scary, how he can just climb on a motorcycle and just go fast. He's still kind of tweaking the 2024 chassis. He doesn't seem as kind of outspoken about how amazing the 2024 chassis is compared to Pecco. And we saw last year, certainly, that Martin and Pecco took a little bit of time to kind of get adjusted to the new packages. But it just seems this new 24 package is, it's 23 amplified, which of course it would be, and we've seen from the lap times breaking lap records, speeds, and blah 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 blah. But it's a lot easier to get along with straight away compared to what the 23 package was. And Pecco last year was still kind of saying, I'm not a test rider, I don't want to test bits, and I want to climb on something that's finished. And this new Ducati just seems so refined. And it's what intrigues me is, you talk about Yamaha. Fabio, we need more top speed. We need more. You look at those top speed charts. There's no Pecco inside the top 5 top speeds. There's hardly ever a Martin inside the top 5. It's the KTM, the Yamaha, even the Hondas have been up there with Mia and Marini. Just shows you that Ducati, it's not just how fast the bike is. They've got this usable power and this chassis and this combination of aero that's just able to get it down to the ground, and electronics, get it down to the ground, work the best with a Michelin, and just give these riders such a massive advantage. As a Ducati rider, you're going on the track knowing I've got 0.2, 0.3 in my pocket over these guys. I can ride at 99%. The Brads and the Fabios are riding at 100, 110% all the time. Ducati riders going, well, I've kept some in the locker to go. And I look at that and I think, oh God, and KTM, they've made a stride and it looks great. And I just think, but it's just Ducati are they're just on another level at the moment, and they've proved it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's going to be critical this season, which is the same for every season, but your consistency. So we've seen that Brad is consistent. We've seen that Pecco is consistent. What is Jorge Martin going to do in terms of, he was pretty good for a while. When he had pressure, he seemed to buckle. So I think, to me, he's got to step up his mental game. I think, to me, one of it, and we're going to chat, obviously, I think one of the surprises of the testing, yes and no, was Bastianini. So clearly he's back to full fitness. Not last year, the year before, so 2022, he showed how good he is. Now, straight away, he's been competitive. All 3 of the tests, he's been right up there. So I think he's going to be someone else in the mix. And then on the odd occasion, we're going to have Mark. Well, we'll talk about him, obviously. Alex is going to be there. De Gian Antonio, I think he's going to be right in the mix. Those are just the Ducatis we're talking about. Then on the odd occasion, we might have an Oliveira or a Aleix Espargaro and whoever else. But it's that consistency. And I think the Ducati has an advantage in terms of that, exactly what you're saying, that their bike is better. And it seems to be that they don't have to ride at 100% all of the time. So that'll be their advantage. But the disadvantage is there are 8 competitive guys on Ducati, 7, because we never got to see Morbidelli. So I'm a little bit worried about him because he's already missed all the testing. He didn't have the last 2 seasons have been shocking for him. So maybe we can kind of count him out of the equation. And I thought he was going to be very good on the Ducati. But unfortunately, we've got no info, nothing. We can't even say, well, he looks all right. So difficult one, but definitely 7 Ducatis consistently. It might not be the same every week, but they're going to be there all the time. And throw in another 3 riders. That's half the field are going to be challenging week in and week out. So your consistency going forward, and that's where Pecco is so good. He doesn't worry about Friday. So what if he finishes first practice 20th? He's building for when the checkered flag pops out on Sunday afternoon. So I think your mental game is going to have to be as good as your bike and your physical ability to ride that bike throughout the whole season.
So I just want to go through the list as it ended at this last Qatar test. Obviously, Pecco Bagnaia on top. Not much to say about Pecco. You've just summed it up there. He's got that consistent He's headstrong, he's confident in himself, in the team love him, the team mold themselves around him, which is a little bit to the detriment of Bastianini. We're still waiting for that kind of headbutting Ducati management, that we thought was going to play out last season with Bagnaia and Bastianini. It never got to because of Bastianini and the injury, and I think that's going to come to play this year. So Pecco's the man to beat. He's number one. He's got the target on his back, but he's gone through a full year of carrying that number one plate. He knows the pressures that come with carrying that number one plate, so he knows what he's got to do. And again, in testing, he proved he doesn't panic. He doesn't. If he ends day one in second last place, he knows what needs to be done, and he's a lot more meticulous than some other riders that kind of throw their toys out and panic very quickly. Whereas Pecco, kind of keeps it all to himself. And I watched that There Can Only Be One documentary about the build up to the championship last year and the finale of the championship, and there were one or two cracks where I was like, well, I didn't see that. So we didn't see that side of Pecco in the general kind of broadcast that we saw. So that's what I love about these kind of shows, is it shows you that behind the scenes, where he was in some way cracking, and he still came out and he said, I was cracking under the pressure. I had to just kind of take a step back and just look at things and just calm down and almost put the pressure back on Martin. So heading to Martin, who finished the test in second place, 156.8, only 2/10 behind Pecco Bagnaia. And, I remember when a MotoGP time around Qatar I remember them dipping into the 58s, and it was like, geez, how the hell did a motorcycle do a 58, 56s? I mean, it's just ridiculous. But Martin, just looking at the Martin and talking about Martin and watching that series as well, as you said, a couple of occasions he buckled under pressure. Every episode I watched, he had this chip on his shoulder about that not being selected as the factory Ducati rider. So every episode he would throw in a little comment about it, like, they never took me. They had the chance to take me and they never took me. So Martin's got to forget about that. He's got to kind of almost drop that and just have a little bit more faith in his riding ability, because when he does, he's unstoppable. When Martin has got his chest puffed out and struts his stuff, the guy's unstoppable. The guy is fearless. He's unstoppable. He's on an unstoppable machine. It's when that little, he's very much got an angel and a devil on his shoulder, Martin. And when that angel talks to him, everything's happy. When that devil starts going, but remember, they didn't want you and they chose Pecco, and that kind of interferes with him. So again, like you said, he almost needs a mental coach to come in and say, right, forget about the rest of that. Forget about that. Do Jorge Martin, and you will win this championship. And it's I think it's going to be a Pecco and Martin to the wire again. As you said, I can see other riders and factors coming into play. But if Martin wants to win this championship, he's got to beat Pecco at Pecco's own game, which is, as you said, that consistency.
And I don't know if he can. Last year, I was quite adamant when we had, I think, 5 races to go. I was adamant he was going to win. He had won, I don't know, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, all the sprint races, and he was really on a good wicket. Then he had that crash at, I think it was in Japan, and things started to fall apart. And Pecco behind the scenes, he might have been panicking and flustered and needed to change a few things. But as a demeanor that you saw on TV, he was as calm as a cucumber. Now, Martin, I don't know if he can deal with that in the same way, because like we said, I agree with you. They're going to be the main 2 protagonists, but we're going to have a De Gianantonio, Bastianini, Marc Marquez thrown in the mix, and it's going to upset him. When they crashed at Valencia, him and Marquez, he was very quick to shout and scream at Marc, but it was actually his fault. So now that's the pressure. And I understand the disappointment he couldn't win the championship. But now if that happens to him 4 or 5 races into the championship, and a Bastianini or a whoever, Bagnaia, bombs up the inside of him, is he going to get a little bit rattled because he's now in 4th and he likes to be in 1st? So I think we'll see if he's fragile. That's kind of where it's going to come out. But going to his testing, did you see that he complained the last day at Qatar? First time in his MotoGP career, he had chattering at the back of the bike, and they didn't know how to sort it out. So that's how he finished the test. Now, does that play on his mind that in 14 days time, he's back at the track where they've had this problem and they didn't know how to resolve it. So I don't know, something that he mentioned that I hope he's not now starting to already look at an excuse. I'm presuming it's a genuine thing, and I think Ducati will work it out, but why only him? So yeah, something I read that I thought that's quite an interesting way to finish your test. You want to finish the test like Bagnaia, top of the pops, even if you're third or fourth, you've had a great run, everything's hunky-dory. But for him, the first thing he said was, I've never had chatter before on a MotoGP bike. So yeah, let's see how that pans out in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, can you imagine him on a KTM? He would have no teeth left with the amount of chatter. It is interesting also going back to that, there can only be one documentary, in that final stages where I think it was Phillip Island, there was so much controversy at the time of Ducati somehow fed him a shit tire and it's Ducati's fault. And then it kind of all played out there. And Martin, you watch the documentary and Martin makes the decision. The Michelin guy's still there and Martin says to him, so what do you think? And the Michelin guy says, you go medium. And Martin makes that soft choice. So there were some bad decisions made, and it was from the cocky nature that's Martin to make those decisions. When you are that confident and that you're untouchable, and so Martin needs to find the balance between that cockiness and that I'm untouchable to the listen. But at the same time, you're in a championship here. And in that kind of situation, you go with what everyone else is going with. You've got to there's certain rules you've got to play by if you want to be a MotoGP champion. And like you said, as you said, those are the little tricks that he's going to have to really learn and abide by this year to get ahead of Pecco Bagnaia. Just on some of the comments here, we're going to go through each rider individually. So Ruan will catch up with KTM. Just one little comment here. Little Big Media Code, the new concession rules makes it crazy for KTM to support all 8 bikes equally. Look for them to focus on 3 bikes once the season starts. GG is already unhappy that so many bikes get concessions. Now, that's another big talking point coming into there is the concessions. We know that Yamaha and Honda already at the Sepang test, they had 2 days prior, along with the rookie, which was Pedro Acosta, and the test teams. Before all the guys went out on track. Now, it's something that Yamaha and Honda obviously fought for. It's something that they needed, something that Ducati and KTM were a little bit more like, well, we had to do everything the hard way and spend the money and take the time to do it. So they feel like, Honda and Yamaha are getting a little bit of preferential treatment, which in a way I can understand that, but, they're really in a bad place. But people always talk about, KTM need a 3rd team or a 4th team. It's unfair that Ducati. We've got to remember, and I think we've said it time and time again, this is not Ducati putting 8 bikes on there. This is VR46 buying 2 Ducatis. This is Gresini buying 2 Ducatis because they're the bike to have. And as Little Big Media Co says, Gigi is probably like, this is great, but with that comes massive complications. They've got to build and supply stock and parts, and especially now that Marc Marquez is there. You always got to throw that in. Carry all the spare parts now for all these bikes. You've got to have the staff to manage. Each team gets, a Ducati Corsa logo T-shirt in their garage to funnel all that information in that. So it's a lot of resources that Ducati put out there. So over the years, my argument of it's unfair that Ducati that's dwindled for me because they've worked hard, they've spent the money, they've done all the homework to make and have the best package on the grid. And it's not their fault now that everyone wants it. The problem is coming now with the management of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we go back probably 10 years, I can't remember exactly when Honda and Yamaha were the bike to have, KTM specifically, so when they came into the championship, they had all the concessions. Aprilia had all the concessions. So now that the wheels turned, you can't suddenly want to move the goalposts. I think it's fantastic that Honda and Yamaha are given the concessions because we don't want to see 8 Ducatis at the front, 4 KTMs, 2 Aprilias, and then the Japanese bikes at the back. We want to see a pretty level playing field. It's never going to always be an equal playing field. We know that. There are different engine configurations, there's different riders, so that makes it interesting. But we also don't want to see 2 highly competitive manufacturers lagging behind because rules are not allowing them to catch up. So, because the concession says once you've achieved, I think it's 3 podiums, your concessions are gone. So in all fairness, Honda didn't get that last year, neither did Yamaha. So it's only fair that they get that, I think. I think we're trying to, as I say, we don't want 8 Ducatis, 4, 2, and then the poor Japanese are struggling at the back. Let's get it as equal as can be within the framework of the law. As I say, that's how it was a few years ago. So Ducati, KTM, you had the advantage. I don't remember Ducati ever having concessions. I think they joined the championship before that became a thing. And I mean, Capirossi won straight away on the bike. So, but anyway, definitely KTM and Aprilia benefited from that. So that wheels turned, so be it. It's not like, and you can see from the testing times, the Honda and the Yamaha are not going to dominate this year. There's absolutely no chance. So they may be making a hoo-ha out of something that they don't need to. I think more importantly, they should now start looking at limiting the aero. What are we doing about this tire pressure thing? I see there's been a hell of a lot of discussion around that. These are things that are going to detract from the championship. We want to see good racing and a good championship. So let's have all the bikes, and they'll never be equal, like I said, but let's have them more equal and take it from there. Don't worry about who tests twice a year more than always extra tires. It's going to make it better for everybody, the racing as well as the spectators. And the spectators are as much a part of the sport as the teams, because without us, they're not going to function. So I think it's quite an important thing to look at.
Yeah, very, very well put there. Heather Springer's asking, what's the documentary I'm talking about? So Heather, if you go on YouTube, on the MotoGP YouTube channel, it's called There Can Only Be One. And I think there's 4 episodes. There's a couple of episodes.
Season 2,
Yeah. And it just highlights, they talk to the championship contenders at the beginning of the year, and it just goes through the season and then to crunch time. So they're very, they're 30-minute episodes, but it's a great.
Last year DSTV did show it. I've seen it on YouTube. I haven't seen it on DSTV. So possibly at some point in the next month or so, it'll be available on DSTV as well as a package.
Yeah, it's a must watch, because you get to see that the reaction from the riders that you don't get to see on the normal TV coverage, like when Pecco's crashed and he comes in after the one race and he's sitting there and he goes, that's it, I've thrown the whole championship away, it's over. And then he's back at the top and he's smiling, and Martin's in his garage screaming at his pit crew. And so not screaming at his pit crew, but throwing his gloves down and reaction to the mistakes he's made. So yeah, if you haven't watched it, have a look out on DSTV or get onto YouTube and watch it there. Third place in the Qatar test we're talking is Enea Bastianini. Now Qatar, we know he's good. He beat Brad Binder there a couple of years ago by a tenth or so. Remember, on the Grassini bike. Enea definitely does seem to favor some tracks. We saw him at Sepang last year. He was good at the Sepang test as well. Qatar has been good. Qatar, he was good here now, but he definitely seems to also be, as you said, getting back to his kind of full fitness, full confidence again. And he needs to, we're gonna talk about riders whose rides are on the line type thing for this year. And Bastianini certainly will stay in MotoGP. He's fast enough to stay in MotoGP, but his factory Ducati ride is the big talking point, and he knows that Martin wants that ride. And every time he comes in and he sees Martin ahead of him on a timesheet, he knows that's going to be bad news for him in many ways. Going back to Martin quickly, and this is what irritates me a little bit with Martin and his management, is at the beginning of the year, there was all this talk, well, if Ducati don't give me a factory ride, I can go wherever I want. And then there's talk that he could go to Honda and this and this and this. And that irritates me a bit, because I look at it and I go, Martin, yes, you're fantastic. You're a fantastic talent. Okay, but Brad Binder and all those guys were beating you in Moto2. Ducati helped make you the rider you are today. If you had climbed into that MotoGP championship on a KTM like Brad and that, where would you be? You wouldn't be where you are now. I can tell you that. You certainly wouldn't be better off than Brad Binder or anyone. So, it's biting the hand that feeds in many ways with Martin, and he puts a lot of pressure on Ducati. And I look at it and I go, well, you've got the exact same bike, and this was also highlighted in the documentary. You've got the exact same bike as Pecco, exact. To everything about that bike, other than the colors, is the exact same as Pecco Bagnaia. You're on a factory Ducati contract, so the same as Enea Bastianini, not necessarily the same as Pecco because he's champion, so there's more incentive and money. But so you're not in the factory team, but you are as factory supported as a factory rider is. So why do you play these games like, well, if Ducati don't want to support me, I'll go to Honda and blah. Well, piss off to Honda then. Go ride a bike that's concessions and struggling to turn and crashing. Go do that then. Because I don't know, it gets under my skin, and that's one thing I don't like about Martin is I like the cockiness. I don't mind cockiness. Every MotoGP rider needs that, but don't be biting the hand that feeds, because it's not right. But anyway, Bastianini third in the test, and yeah, there's a lot of people that want that factory Ducati ride, not just Martin. There's Marc Marquez now. There's already talk about him. If he has a good season, will he be on a factory Ducati? So it's a big year for Naya.
Yeah, I think it is. Just going back to Martin, I hope that Ducati don't call his bluff that I can go here and I can go there and I'm worth so much. Because exactly, we discussed it how many times last year? He's got exactly the same, just different colors.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't call his bluff and say, well, there you are. You see that Honda? Help yourself, boy. So anyway, Bastianini, I hope he has a great season. I think he's very talented. He was very unlucky last year. He seemed, like you say, two tracks that definitely favor him. But, that's also good for your confidence that you come off a good test in Sepang, a good test in Qatar, and you're going into the season starting at a track where you've won. And, the enthusiasm and the positiveness will be there. He'll get there. He'll know that straight away he can be competitive. So I think I'm really looking forward to him having an injury-free season to see what he can do. If he has a season with no injuries, if he's not as good as we think he is, he'll get exposed very quickly. This year, if you're not on the top of your game, boy, you're going to be struggling in 10th before you know it.
Listen, and I love Enea Bastianini. I love the beast. I love everything that he does. I like his riding style. I like, I love everything about Bastianini. Having said that, I don't think he's championship winning material at the end of the year. He's going to win races. He's going to get podiums. I don't think he's going to. Hello, my baby. I've got an interruption here. I'm going to say hello to everybody. Huh? I came in my dress. I'd like to dress up for Daddy. Daddy's just busy working. Okay. You go downstairs and play, and I'll come see you now. Okay. Love you, baby bear. Bye. You look beautiful, my angel. You're a beautiful princess. Okay, go to mommy. Okay, Daddy's going to talk now. Okay, you go to mommy. Okay, love you. Bye. Bye. So yeah, Enea Bastianini, I can't see him being a title contender, and that. But at the end of the day, how do factory Ducati have? Yeah, how do you have two riders that are going for that championship? It just, I don't know. It's such a tough one to call, because you want Enea to do well, but he just doesn't have that final little piece,
And certainly over the last two seasons, Pecco's sorted out the pecking order. He's the top dog. So no matter what Bastianini does, he can win the first 10 races. Pecco's still going to be at the top of the pile for this season. No matter what, Ducati are going to treat him like the champion that he is, and he's going to get the respect and the special treatment that he deserves. So it's going to be very difficult for Bastianini. He's really going to have to be on top of his game every single weekend, which every rider is going to have to do. But for him specifically, because you're quite right, his seat is probably the most prized seat. And as much as I think there are 3 riders that have contracts for next year. So they're going to be 20 excluding Pecco, riders who, if they could get that seat, they would take it. Yeah, so maybe Marini wouldn't if he was offered now that he's got the Honda ride, but certainly that seat is going to be the hot seat for this year.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be interesting to see how Bastianini goes. But like you said, it's so critical that he has an injury-free season so that he can perform at his best week in, week out, because every rider is going to have to do that. You cannot be less than 99% in this championship now, the way it is, because as you said, you'll just find yourself in 10th or nowhere. 4th place in the test, Alex Marquez, Gresini, Ducati. Now let's not forget, Gresini still running the older spec bikes. So we'll get to Mark a little bit later. But, in terms of them, there's no real development testing happening. They're literally just trying, setups from last year's bike, obviously trying their own little ways to get the setup on those, to them, that's new bikes, but, they're the old spec bikes. And Alex Marquez, glimpses last year, definitely glimpses of Alex. I still don't see him as a consistent rider by any means. I think he'll have exactly what he did like last year, a couple of good races up and down, but there's going to be crashes involved. There's going to be errors involved. So I think for Alex Marquez, it's always just a case of if I can get a couple of podiums, great. If I can finish top 5, great. But never going to be, in my mind. Look, if he goes and proves me wrong, good on him. But I never see Alex Marquez as one that's going to be there week in and week out.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And hopefully he surprises us. I think that's where you were quite right when we kind of started. You said it's going to be Pecco and Martin racing for the championship. There might be, we'll see in 3 or 4 races time, whether Mark is going to be a factor in the championship. Bezzecchi so far has been a little bit off the boil in terms of what everyone else has done. So I don't know if he's going to be there, remembering he came 3rd last year. So you would expect him to be up there. So it's going to be interesting. I think we definitely have the 2 protagonists who are certainly, barring any kind of major injury happening to them, are going to be at the top. What happens from 3rd to 5th or 6th is going to be very interesting. So that's where I don't think we can read too much into the timing, especially the guys who did a time attack, because we know what happened with Brad. He did that and he got 2 yellow flags on the 2 fast laps that he tried to put in. And we know what that means. Your lap is cancelled. So the fact that Brad wasn't in the top 4 is actually irrelevant, because when you look at the bigger picture and have a look at, especially at Qatar, look at his 10, he did a full race simulation and he was 10 seconds faster than what they did in the race. Jeez. So you think of that, that's half a second a lap for 22 laps. So certainly when you look at that as the bigger picture, as opposed to his 1 lap time, Brad, without a doubt, is top 3. Top 4, and we know that he finished 4th last year, but the gap has come down in terms of the overall race pace. 1 lap is vitally important, because this year, if you're starting 11th, 12th, 13th on the grid, it's almost going to be impossible to get into the top 5. Almost. 1 or 2 tracks it'll be easier, but certainly you're going to have your work cut out for you. So that 1 lap pace is critical. But saying that, with Brad, that's why he wasn't higher up on the timesheets at the end of the day, because he got 2 yellow flags when he was doing his time attack.
Yeah, so a couple of people in the comments have highlighted our big mistake here, that my beautiful daughter interrupting me just kind of sent my head into whack. I was reading off the Sepang test times.
Yes, Mark was 4th.
Yeah. So Sepang was 58, but they got into 56s. Qatar, they actually broke into the 50s. Pecco was only right to get into the 50s. Yeah. So yeah, just catching up with the Qatar test. It was Pecco on top. Bastianini, his teammate, was in 2nd. Aleix Espargaro on the Aprilia was 3rd. We'll talk about him now. Mark was 4th. So Mark, let's go to Mark before we go back to Aleix, and then we'll carry on with the list. Mark has actually been a tough going in the Sepang and this test. Has been technical gremlins. It hasn't been this smooth transition that I think he thought it was going to be. I love that clip that they put out with Pecco talking to Mark and saying, "No, I can see you still riding this thing like a Honda." And Mark's problem is, and and this is a problem why it was never going to work with him and Honda now where they were. Mark's in too much of a rush. Mark, the clock's ticking for Mark, so I don't have time to wait and develop, and that's why he made this move to Ducati. But he needs to slow that process down now. You're on a Ducati, you're not on a Honda anymore, so you need to take this time. You need to just take a step back and calm things down a bit, because otherwise you're going to find yourself back in a Honda situation. And I think if I look at the difference between the Sepang test and this one, he kind of did that. I don't think he was trying to just chase a lap time. I think, Mark, a lot, especially now, Mark will love that. Can you imagine if I go out, and he did this at the Valencia test, I think. Can you imagine if I go out, first time on a Ducati, and put a top 3? First of all, what that'll do in the media, and second, what message that'll send out to my rivals. And Mark definitely thinks like that. He always wants to plant seeds in rivals. He always wants to be the headline, because the more he's being spoken about, it is something he thrives on. But coming into the Qatar test, it looked like okay, yes, he had technical gremlins. He crashed late on after setting that fast lap, his first crash on the Ducati so far. But he definitely seemed like he had found something with the Ducati, and that was because there was a slight mental shift in the way he was approaching this now. It's like, okay, calm down. It's a long season. You're not going to win this championship now. Let me prove people wrong at the end of the season rather than in testing now.
Yeah, definitely. I think he needs to slow things down. I thought he did that at Sepang. He didn't, even on day 2. I think he led for most of day 2, probably up until the last hour, but he didn't chase a lap time like some of the other guys. He seemed to be doing longer runs, 8 and 10 lap runs at a time. We obviously don't have insight into what he was testing or what they were asking him to do. He seemed to just be a little bit more steady. Then he did crash now at Qatar, and he said it was the first time he tried to test the limit on the Ducati, which we understand his whole career with Honda. That's what he's done. Friday, he would, let's go to before 2020, even when he was winning all the championships. Generally on the Friday, he'd have 1 or 2 crashes. Then he'd find the limit and he wouldn't crash again on the weekend, or very seldom. I think maybe he's trying that on the Ducati. He's now feeling more comfortable, maybe not quite where he should be, but he's definitely better off. And as soon as he started to get to what he thinks is his limit, he had a little crash. It was a small front end. He had a little marks on his leathers, nothing serious. I think he's doing it. I do think he's slowed down a little bit. But exactly what you said first, time's not waiting for him. And he's got to catch up. 11 years on a Honda, 7 days on a Ducati. So time's kind of against him. First race is, the next time they ride the bike is free practice 1. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. One thing I will say, and I looked at all the guys who did long runs. Mark was very consistently in the top 5 for doing 10 or more laps in a stint. And I think that bodes well for him. It shows that, and one thing versus Alex Marquez, who set the fastest time, I think it was in Sepang, for anyone who did 10 laps or more. Mark's last 3 laps were faster than Alex's last 3 laps. Even though over the 10 laps, Alex was faster, Mark's last 3 laps. So that's showing maybe he's controlling the tire a little bit better, which will benefit him, obviously, in the longer races. We're going to see very soon, but I think he's going about it the right way, understanding the expectation that's on his shoulders. But also we'll find out very quickly if he's lost that edge that he certainly used to have. Well, we'll see.
So, I mean, okay, Stiggy Wiggy says we can't read too much into this. It's testing. By the time the second race comes, that's when you'll be able to see. And I fully agree with that. Racing is a different animal. But as I said at the top of the show, you can still pull apart and see that Ducati are making good strides. KTM are making good strides. Some of the others are still there. Aleix on the Aprilia is making good strides. Miguel's not so much. So there's a couple of things you can pull apart. But finishing off on the Mark on the Mark topic is, this is the first time in how long that Mark's rocked up to testing as well with. There's no new parts, you're not trying. Last year on the Honda, you would have 4 bikes in the garage for him to test, Now, this consistency of, okay, well, there's a bike, go and ride it, and we tweak here and we tweak there, but we're not literally going from Kalex swing arm to Honda swing arm to from this bike to this bike. So I think that's something that he's also got to kind of just reel in and go, geez, this is a new way of doing things. It's a new team. It's a new crew chief. He had Santi that knew him as well as he knew himself. So that it's, as you said, it's a whole new kettle of fish, and it's 7 days into it. So that Marc Marquez Ducati project, in my mind, is only going to get better the more that he adapts mentally, physically, riding style. That process is going to get better the more the team adapts to him. So predictions for Mark is the tough one. I get a lot of people asking me, so what's Mark going to do? And there's a lot of people out there saying, no, well, Cal Crutchlow said it, put Mark on a Ducati and they're not going to see which way he went. It's a tough one. And this is a question for everyone in the comments as well. How's Mark going to do by the end of the season? I certainly think there's going to be a race win involved, maybe 2, maybe 3. I certainly think there'll be podiums. I certainly think there'll be crashes. It's in Marc Marquez's DNA. But it's exactly like you said. It's going to go one of 2 ways. There's going to be there's no in between with Mark. It's either he's going to succeed, he's going to win races, blah blah blah, or it's going to highlight that edge has maybe gone, or just the fact that the championship has just gone to another level, as it did with Valentino Rossi, as
Yeah.
it did with a lot of riders. The championship outgrew them. The championship just got too fast for them to win. I'm talking. Mark is still capable and very fast, but it's whether or not, the championship has now just done that to him.
And also he's now on the championship winning bike. So he has no, and I'm not saying he was using the Honda as an excuse. Yes, he certainly was, but everyone knows how cuck the Honda is.
Yeah.
He's now on a bike that he can't turn around and say, oh, but we've got no rear grip after 8 laps and we can't turn the bike, and out the corners it's wheel spinning when there are 4 Ducatis in front of him. That was one thing, and I mentioned it many times last year. When he finished a race, he was generally the first Honda and way ahead of the second Honda. Now, if he's consistently finishing 4th and 5th and there are 2 or 3 Ducatis in front of him, he's not going to be able to throw that excuse. So that's why I say he could get exposed. We're going to find out, because now everything is going to be up to him. I think he's going to be good. I said it. I think he'll win before we get to Mugello, which I think is round 6. Let's see how it goes. I don't know if I'm quite so confident on that prediction, having seen all the testing now and how fast everyone's going. But like you say, he's Marc Marquez. His DNA is to win. Just on that subject, my wife bought me a book. It was our wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago. It's called Being Marc Marquez, and it is fantastic. And it goes into him, and it tells you, and a lot of people won't like it because it's about him, but his DNA is to win. And in the book, it's penned by someone else, but it's his thoughts. He says, I don't care if I got no friends in MotoGP. I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to win. And that's his mentality. And a guy like that, and I think all the top guys are pretty much like that, you can't switch that on and off. So, what you're saying is slow down, do things more methodically. And one thing he mentions in the book, he says he's very lucky that his whole career he's had the ability to get on a bike, new track he's been to, doesn't matter. Within 3 laps, he's found his limit. He generally doesn't go much faster after that. So, let's see how it pans out for him. I think he's got his hands full, which everyone has, but we'll see how he adapts, and he'll certainly be up for the challenge. There's no doubt about that.
So it's contrasting in the comments here. Mariska, I'm predicting Mark 5th overall. Andre Calvert, Mark 3rd at best this year. I think Richard Walker feel this year will be his last big year. It is his to lose. Jaden Sneijman, top 4. Tough to say where, but in the top 4, he thinks Warren Roberts, I think he can win one more title. Obviously he's chasing title number 9, and there's no doubt about it. Mark wants to get to 10, which will be better than a certain VR46, which is no doubt one of his big things, and to win on a Ducati, which Rossi couldn't do. You can't even compare. It's not even comparing apples with apples closely. So we won't even get into that argument. But anyway, either way, I'm excited the move happened. It's just elevated MotoGP into another stratosphere because of that move. Never mind the other factors, the Brads, the Pecos, all that, which is already exciting. Mark on a Ducati in an independent team Ducati it's brilliant for the championship. So let's see how that plays out. Aleix Espargaro, 3rd overall on the Aprilia. Maverick Vinales, as he always does, came out of the boat on the first day of testing, flying straight into a really good competitive, I think 51, 53 lap times. And you kind of thought, oh, well, this is Maverick Vinales doing what Maverick does best. He's just the king at testing. But Aleix, I take my hat off to Aleix. And again, watching there can only be one. I did lose a little bit of respect last year for Aleix with the way he acted with, his pit crew when he walked in, slammed the tank and screamed at the one guy, and the Franco Morbidelli incident. There were a couple of things there, but then I watched the testing and I thought, this guy's, I think he's nearly 40, 38, 39 years old or something, getting into, the later years of his life, and to still be this competitive. Yes, I know it's testing and whatever, but to still finish a MotoGP test in 3rd place, 0.3 off the fastest rider in the world, it's hats off to him. You just kind of wonder how this Aleix is coming to play now, and he's been there for so long, and we're seeing the best version of Aleix now. It's kind of like Alvaro Bautista as well. But credit to him, he keeps himself fit, he keeps himself healthy. He's probably the fittest guy in the paddock, to be honest, with the amount of cycling and that he does. But a good asset for Aprilia to have, because he's still able to put things together to go fast. Their problem for me is now, so who does Aprilia listen to? Who does Aprilia listen? Aleix, okay, yeah, listen to him. He's your captain and he's doing things right. Maverick can't develop a cold. I'm sorry, he can't develop much. Miguel, talking about riders that have got big seasons ahead of them. Miguel, yes, I know. We'll talk about him later. Or Raul, it's Raul Fernandez. Should a 38, 39-year-old be your checkmate piece on a chessboard?
Yeah, I think what they need to do, I agree with your sentiment. They certainly need to continue with whatever direction Aleix is heading the bike in, because it's working for him more than whatever Maverick is asking or telling them to do. But I think remember, Raul Fernandez missed the Sepang test. He started on day one, had a big crash, and that was him done. He did exceptionally well at Qatar. I actually highlighted him as one of my surprises of the test.
Well, yeah,
because of the fact that he missed Sepang.
Yeah.
So maybe what they need to do is, yes, Aleix is their number one rider, but start getting a little bit more input from Raul, or start letting Aleix guide him, which they probably are doing. Because if Aprilia are going to carry on in the championship as a serious contender, they need plan B, because like you say, Aleix, even if he's got this year and next year in him as a competitive rider, then he's going to be done. So I think they need to have that plan B. And me right now, I'd certainly be looking at Raul Fernandez, going by what he did in the testing, understanding that he was injured and missed Sepang. So he actually only had 2 days of testing, and he was solid. Fast on day one, fast on day two. And I mean, go back to his Moto 2 days. Yes, he didn't win the championship. Remy Gardner won that year, but he was proper good. He won the most amount of races as a rookie. He was fantastic. So certainly the talent is there. Aprilia now need to grab that bull by the horns and say, okay, you and Aleix are our guys. This is what we're going to do. That would be my opinion if I was involved, if I was, what's his name, Massimo, running the team for Aprilia, and say, okay, here's where we're heading. Aleix, you're still our guy, but Raul, stand close and take heed of what we're doing and where we're going, and listen to his input more than maybe Maverick. And Oliveira, I don't know what goes on with that, So, yeah, exactly what you say. We can talk about him, but he's lagging down the timesheets, which he did for 2/3 of last year. I understand he also had lots of injury problems.
Yeah, we'll talk about Miguel just now, because it is a big topic of discussion. We've got a lot of Portuguese fans that follow our channels, and I get asked a lot of questions. And when we do speak critically of Oliveira, we seem to get a lot of backlash, and that's true supporters, just as we would do with the Binders. So I welcome that. But yeah, there's definitely a topic of discussion there around Miguel Oliveira. Raul Fernandez, as you said, 5th overall in the test, and I was also very impressed. I didn't see it coming, especially when he wrote himself off so early on at the Sepang test. I kind of just shook my head like, Raul, how do you think you've had all this time off? You've get back on the bike, brand new team, brand new owners. Davide Brivio is coming into the setup. It's Ruan Dietler, for someone's commented as well, that that team, that Trackhouse Racing, is going to be a lot better than RNF ever was. More money, Brivio's there, and I fully agree. That's the change that needed to happen has happened. But Raul's kind of like handing his CV in on the first day of work, and he does that, and I was just like, Raul, I mean, what are you doing? He bounced back at Qatar. He really did show good mentality, good pace. He showed the Raul that everyone's been waiting to see. The Raul that Yamaha factory were going to sign at one stage. The Raul that took Darren's place because he's the next best thing, The Raul that went to KTM because KTM saw him as such an asset. The biggest problem, and I've seen it first hand on more than one occasion, and I'm sure the world's seen it, especially if you follow the debriefs and everything very closely. Raul has got a bit of an attitude problem, not just him, the people around him, and that more often than not gets in the way that spoiled brat mentality comes in a lot with Raul Fernandez, where it's, it's not me, it's the bike. It's not me, it's the bike. It's, and that's what KTM, that's why they couldn't get along at KTM. The Austrians and the Germans and the Styrians at KTM are very, our product is good. How can you say this?
Yeah.
And Raul's got to, again, he's got to be managed better. Him as a person, as a rider, someone's got to grab him and say, listen, you can't do this. If you want to stay in this championship and you want to progress to the Raul Fernandez that everyone expects and knows is there, this is how you have to act. And maybe that is, as you said, a Massimo Rivoli or Aleix Espargaro saying, right, come, let's kind of mold you and let's work a bit closer with you to make this project work for you and for us, because I think that's what it takes. Raul's got the speed. We know that. He proved it. Yeah, he's got 1 lap pace. That's great. But, fifth in this test is probably his best showing in MotoGP so far. He hasn't proved anything in the last 3 seasons. This will be his fourth
season. This is going into his,
No, this is going to, so this is his 3rd season. This is going into his 3rd season. He's done KTM, he's done a year on Yamaha.
No, in a year last year on the Aprilia.
Yeah. So how many seasons is it now? No, it's 2 Aprilia and one KTM. Yes. He didn't do the Yamaha season.
No, he didn't.
RNF went to Aprilia. Yeah. So anyway, it's again one of the riders that you excuse the saying, but his cock's on the chopping block, because you've got to start performing. It's especially if Trackhouse with W Brivio turned themselves into this big asset, which I have no doubt it'll turn into. That'll be a really decent ride that to get onto that team. So it's up to Raul. It's completely up to Raul.
Yeah, I think Davide Brivio is going to have a big role to play, and he's certainly the right guy. He's going to be a father figure, if that's the right word. And I think his demeanor is always very calm, and that might just work for Raul, where he can maybe pull him aside and say, listen, this is how we're going to approach this, and this is what we need to do. He knows how to butter him up and show him that, look at the lap times, look at the segment times. There's nothing wrong with how you ride, but we need to get you to focus your attention at the right time in the right places. Don't worry about being a cocky 19, 20, 21-year-old strutting your stuff. Like you say, Rob, he's proved nothing.
Yeah.
Now it's time to come down a peg, settle down, listen to the advice that's given you from wherever it comes from. Don't criticize, rather say, listen, how are we going to make it better? And let's see how he goes. I certainly think he's showing maybe a little bit more maturity. We don't see any of the behind the scenes, and we saw nothing of the testing on TV, so we don't know what he was like. But I think with Brivio in that team, that's a big asset. We discussed it last year. I was very disappointed that Honda didn't get him. Whether they tried or not, we don't know. But, I do think he's run very successful teams in the past. So he knows exactly what it takes. And I think that could be the factor that molds that team. And as you say, they've got way more cash than they had previously, which means they can get better people involved. And, it's a whole snowball effect. And I think it could be very beneficial to Fernandez if he takes in whatever they expect of him, as long as he's not hot-headed and says, who are you to tell me what to do? So, yeah, we'll see how that pans out.
So moving on, Maverick Vinales was 6 overall. So, 3 Aprilias inside the top 6, a good showing there from Aprilia. I think the Qatar track's a track that lends itself to the Aprilia. Again, never mind the riders. Aprilia showed inconsistencies last year at certain tracks and handling certain situations. So, they've also got to improve themselves, and they'll know that. It's a smaller company. They don't have the budget or the resources as many of the other teams. So, they're still chipping away at it and still developing in many ways. A couple of years ago when Aleix was leading the championship at one stage and challenged for the championship, ended up 3rd or whatever he did, it almost put added pressure on Aprilia. And I still remember the beginning of last year saying, yeah, that was great, but you got to back. It's only when you back it up that you've really made it. And Aprilia battled with that last year. So it's a work in progress for them, and they've got to just try and take that step again and maintain that step. It's one thing making a step, it's maintaining it. And that's where Ducati are so good, and that's where KTM have become so good, and that's where Yamaha and Honda have failed. So But Vinales, speaking about riders whose heads are on the chopping block, I'll put it that way. Maverick for me is a big one. There can't be any more excuses. Still, this third season on Aprilia, hasn't won yet on an Aprilia. Yeah, a couple of podiums. I think he's at what, 5 podiums or 4 podiums maybe. That's not good enough for a full factory, especially when you got your 38-year-old Alicia Spargo, who, let's be real, has never been anything, never come close to winning a championship kind of ever before, even in Moto 2, and that he was always just, and I feel bad saying this, but in many ways he was a grid filler, Alicia Spargo, Fost, but was never one of the elite. And he's beating Maverick more often than not. So Maverick, that's a big ride. And, you look at, and I know Wayne Taylor and a couple other people mentioned in the comments, we'll get on it a little bit later as well, but it's a big ride there. And with Fabio Quartararo whining and complaining and still not happy at Yamaha, he'll never be happy at Yamaha. That we'll talk about just now, but that relationship's over. I wouldn't be surprised if Fabio's already got something lined up with Aprilia at some stage of the season, saying, right, at this point, if I'm not happy, I'm signing with Aprilia. Whether that's in place of Aleix or Maverick or Miguel, or I don't know, but yeah, Maverick's got to do something now. You've had your time, and he's still young. That's the thing. I mean, he's 28, or he's Brad's age. He's just been there for so long, and he's had so many opportunities now. And Maverick needs to make something happen. He can't just keep going on as, Maverick's Fost, and look how fast he is, but with no end result.
And he's run out of options because he burnt his bridges with Yamaha. And where does he go from Aprilia? The only place he might want to go is to Ducati. Those seats are full. He's got to win the championship basically to warrant any kind of Ducati ride for 2025. So I think he's going to be at Walker and Seymour at the end of the season, unless he really it'll have to be his best season in MotoGP. He's got no other option but to make sure that he pulls the rabbit out of the hat. I can't see it happening. He's very fragile for whatever reason, whether it's mental, whether it's who knows. So I can't see it happening. So I think that's going to be one of the big talking points throughout the season is, and the more people talk, the more pressure's applied to him, the more fragile he becomes. And we've seen it. We saw that he was pretty good at Suzuki. Let's be quite honest. He was consistent. Everything seemed to work there. Remember, David Brivio was running the team, that calming effect, and he had no pressure. To be quite honest, he wasn't expected to be the world champion. But his teammate won the championship the one year, John. Yeah. Now he's on a factory bike that is very competitive. Maybe not all the time, but certainly at 10 of the 20 tracks, it's very competitive. But he's not. Great on Friday, nowhere on Sunday. So yeah, he's definitely. He's going to have to pull big rabbits out of the hat if he wants to keep his ride for next year.
I think fragile is the perfect word to use with Maverick Vinales. And we'll just have to see that exercise. Martin was in 7th, as you said, with those chattering problems. So that's going to have to wait and see how that plays out with Martin. Is it going to play on his mind? Is it something that he just tried from Pecco's side, or new era that he didn't like? We've spoken about Martin and what he needs there. DJ Antonio in 8th. DJ's had a great preseason. This is a rider that, it's well documented that you liked him, and he certainly progressed. And, he was in line for the full HRC seat in place of Marc Marquez. Didn't get that, and at one stage was hanging on and had no ride in World Superbikes, nowhere. VR46 took the chance, took him on there. Whether they fully wanted that, I don't know. I think maybe in some ways it was like, well, it's our best choice. None of our VR46 Academy youngsters are ready yet. Franco Morbidelli has gone to Pramac. Okay, well, let's go with Digi. He did win a race. He did, shine at the end of the year. Let's take a chance. And he's proving to be a solid investment, is Fabio Di Gianantonio. Solid in testing, just seems to be this happy guy. I think, again, it's going to go one of either way as it will. It's either going to fail or succeed. But I think something's clicked now with Fabio. I'm a MotoGP rider. And this confidence of VR46, remember, it's not just this Ducati team, it's the GOAT. Valentino Rossi. I'm an Italian and I'm riding for Valentino Rossi. To a guy like Digi, you can just see the way, he's like, I'm ready to now be a proper MotoGP rider, as he did at the end of last year. But that was more of the pressure of, you've got to, if you want to stay in the championship, you've got to produce results. I think it's going to be a good season for DJ Antonio. I don't see him as a consistent top 3, top 5 week in, week out, but I can certainly see him pulling up a few surprises this year.
Well, last year I said I like the kid. I hope he gets a ride. I was very impressed. He just got better and better and better. I agree with you. He's in the right team for him. They do wonders with their riders. There's that camaraderie. He is an Italian, so he fits straight in. At Sepang, remember the sprint lap distance. So 10 laps, he was the fastest.
Yeah.
Qatar, full race distance, he was the fastest. So yes, you need, as we said earlier, you need that 1 lap speed because you've got to qualify front 2 rows. But in terms of race pace, he's been fantastic in the 2 tests that we've had. And one thing that he's highlighted is Pecco said to him, you're going to struggle. You're going to have to change your style to ride the 2023 bike. Because remember, last year it was on the 22. He's jumped on this bike and says, no, the 23 bike enhances my style. It makes me faster where I'm already fast. So in his head, he's got no issues with the bike. He hasn't jumped on it and thought, Pecco said I've got to change X, Y, and Z. He's jumped on it. He's been fast and he said, well, this package works for me. Let's go. So I personally think he's going to be the fly in the ointment. I think if his head is as strong as it was the last 4 or 5 races of last year, and you've said it, Rob, don't do it for 1 race. Don't do it for 2 races. You've got to put it together for 20 races.
Yeah.
Let's 20 meetings, 40 races now. Let's see how he does. I honestly believe, and I'm going to stick to my prediction from last year, this kid is good, and I think he's going to be the fly in the ointment of Pecco, Jorge Martin, Bastianini. They're going to have him hounding at their heels more often than I think anyone else.
I love Zama's comment here. Maverick and Rins are on the same WhatsApp group, the group of yo-yos. It is. It really is. You just can't defend Maverick anymore. And I know Simon Crayfar's in the same boat. He goes, we just can't defend Maverick anymore. And that's his biggest problem is that there's no more excuses. Run out of excuses.
He's been in some top factory teams and he hasn't delivered. It's not like he's been a second-tier rider. Suzuki, Yamaha, Aprilia, top factory rider, not even a satellite team. So I think that ticket has now been clipped.
Definitely. 9th place, Brad Binder. Not ideal. Lap time was good, 51.5 in terms of where KTM have been at this track before. They've certainly, stepped it up. On day 1, I think Brad finished top 3 or top 4. So good showing there. So fell down a little bit there, but again, good race pace, which was a big highlight. I think he was second behind DJ Antonio.
Yeah.
Or no, he was fastest in race pace in Qatar. No, one of those 2. But anyway, race pace was good. We know Brad at this testing. It's very frustrating being a Brad Binder fan in testing because he plays the long game. Brad's a 5 series game guy. If you think of cricket, he's not a T20 guy. In terms of testing, he showed it last year in the sprint races, which I didn't see coming. And he said in the interview that we did with him, I also didn't think I was going to be that good in sprint races. Turned out he did. KTM Sepang test looked really good. Qatar test looked good. They've certainly made a progression with a new aero, the F1 engineering involvement, and the development. The KTM project is just it keeps going and going and going, which is great. My worry is that it's still kind of just Brad more so. We'll talk about Pedro Acosta in that just now. So and the frustrating part is, again, as people have commented here, it's Brad's biggest problem is there's 8 bloody Ducatis. That's Brad's biggest problem, is that there's these 8 really fast Ducatis. Ziggy Wiggy is trying to start a war here, saying and listen, he's warranted. Every comment is welcomed here. Stiggy said not a fan of Pedro because one comment was that Pedro Acosta is going to potentially dethrone Brad as KTM's number top rider. Stiggy Wiggy, not a fan of Pedro, but he will take the top seat from Brad. And obviously South Africans, as we do, came into full protection of Brad. And Stiggy Wiggy makes a decent comment here. Brad has lost the skill of protecting his tires. He needs to get back to it. And I'm gonna reply to that and say I don't think it's Brad that's lost that skill of protecting his tires. I think the KTM has lost that. And it's not a case of losing it. It's just that Ducati do it so well, and chasing those flipping Ducatis for so long, Brad's got to just use more. You know, as I said earlier, Brad and all those other guys are riding at 110% every lap, including their machinery. Whereas the Ducati riders and Ducati, 95% when they need to be 98%. God knows what a 100% Ducati would actually do. Well, we do know that's when a Martin goes and does stupid lap times in qualifying and stuff. So, yeah, KTM have made a step forward, but so have 8 Ducatis, and in some ways Aprilias. But it's going to be a big season for Brad again. You know, it's his 10th season with factory Red Bull KTM. In the interview that he did at the launch, said it's my 10th season. It's time. The progression's been there: 7th, 6th, 4th, and 4th, or whatever, or 5th and 4th in the championship. So he's getting closer. The problem with Brad is there's always a spotlight on him. Certainly from South African side, but even from the outside world, there's this massive spotlight because KTM are throwing everything, every single resource. Brad is their number one boy. And now he's got that Pedro Acosta thorn to play with this year. So we saw it last year when Jack came in. Jack was faster than Brad. And Brad was a miserable bastard at Portimao. He really was. He was suffering with neck pain, but I think he was also miserable because he has this Jack Miller getting all this attention. And, you know, for God's sake, Brad reacted in the best way possible. He got faster. He got better. And ultimately finished way ahead of any of the other KTMs or gases. That Pedro is going to be a slightly different story. We'll get to him just now, but yeah, we're going to support Brad no matter what. But the next step's got to be top 3. Surely that's got to be the next step.
No, absolutely, and exactly what you say. 8 fast Ducatis, 2 of them almost a shoe in for first and second. Who it's going to be, we'll find out very shortly. But Brad, remember, and we've seen it, and the commentators have highlighted it, Brad is a racer, a Sunday man, yes, and Saturday afternoon. But, you know, he can qualify 9th, 10th, and by the end of the day, he's up to 3rd, 4th, 5th. He certainly has that ability. And judging by what was said during the Sepang test and after Qatar now, KTM have kind of said, our ball is in the Binder court. We're not really going to worry about anyone else for this season. And I know they could then end up with a problem that Honda had from only developing the bike around one rider. But what is their option? Okay, let's see how Pedro Acosta goes. And as you said, we'll chat about him. But right now, their on-form guy, the only one delivering the consistent results is Brad. So give him exactly what he needs. Me personally, and I've said this before, I don't know Jack Miller, the nicest guy in the paddock. But don't waste your time with the Oak who's finishing 14th. Put your resources into the guy who could finish top 3. Yes, Jack's input is critical because he certainly, I think, can help in the development. But don't stress too much about him. I know they've got to look after him. The Pedro Acosta story surprised me as well. Ralph Fernandez, Pedro Acosta, to me, are the big surprises of this testing, but it's only testing. But Brad on a Sunday he's never phased. He doesn't look like he's got troubles. He gets on the bike. He does the best of what he can do, plus 10%, because he's always better than what he should actually be doing. And that bike is definitely way better, but we know so is everyone else, but way better than last year. In terms of everything, Brad's saying this bike is good. Don't worry about our 1 lap pace. This bike is good. So I think he's very happy, and a happy Brad is a dangerous Brad to everyone else. And Qatar is always very fast there. So I think he's going to start on a great wicket. If he can qualify front 2 rows, yeah, he's in with a shout straight away. And once he gets going, he builds momentum and he'll just get better and better. I think certainly top 3 is going to be on the cards for Brad, without a doubt. As much as he's going to have 6 or 8 Ducatis fighting amongst themselves, he'll be the consistent guy out of all of them. So yeah, I think he's going to have a great season.
Yeah, what fills me with big encouragement and joy is the comments from Brad after saying, yeah, we're getting this right now. Yeah, we're still a step, the Ducati are still the benchmark. There's no doubt about it. But this is the big, for Brad to say this is the best preseason testing I've ever had is a big thing. I think where they started last year and how it ended up, for Brad to, it was a big, Brad's not one for big statements. He's never really kind of put it all out there. He's always played his cards kind of safe and said, we're working hard and the team's working hard. It's a big statement. And I think, I think the confidence is there. It's there for all of us to see. KTM have made no quarry about it. They'll throw as much money and resource at it as they need to. They've still got Danny Pedrosa in the team testing. They've got Paulo Spargro in the background now testing. So, everything that needs to be done for KTM to be world champions, or to certainly challenge for the championship, is being done. So we'll always support there and see how that plays out.
And Rob, it's a confidence thing. As a racer, he now goes in 2 weeks' time to Qatar. He arrives there. He knows how good the package is, how well he went in the race simulation. He was fantastic, 10 seconds faster than his race time from last year, which was only in the beginning of November, end of October. 10 seconds is a heck of a difference, so that shows. So now his confidence is up. I think it's going to be fantastic for them. That bike is definitely, they're heading in the right direction. So, I think it's going to be great. And his confidence, I think, will be better than Martin, who's going to get there thinking, yes, now how do I sort this chatter out? And Brad's going to get there and say, how do I get pole position and win this race? So it's going to be very interesting.
There's going to be more of that focus, I think, on qualifying again, because, as Stiggy Wiggy points out, that tire management did let KTM and Brad down at the end, or in many races last year. And it was majority down to the fact that, even if you qualify 6th on the second row, you've still got 5, more often than not, fast Ducatis to get past. And you use tire, resource, energy, mentality to make those passes. We look at and sit on the couch and go, just pass him. It's not that simple at the pace that those guys are going at, so qualifying is going to be a big thing. Even front 2 rows now is not enough. It's MotoGP is got to the level now where it's and we've said we don't want MotoGP to go to Formula 1, but it almost has in that respect, that if you don't qualify front row, it makes the job a lot harder. But anyway, we're back in the Brad Binder court no matter what. 10th place Marco Bezzecchi made the big decision to snub a better contract, a better bike, a better team in the form of Pramac Ducati to stay with VR46, a team that he feels comfortable in. He still says it in the There Can Only Be One documentary, that I made the decision because this is my family. I feel comfortable here, and that's what me as a rider needs to perform. Not necessarily the latest, greatest machinery. I need my surroundings. I need to feel comfortable. And it was a big decision, the right decision, I think, for a Bezzecchi, because, I still made that prediction about Bastianini. Bastianini looked like a rider that, to me, needed that family environment. And that's why he thrived at Cressini, because it's a family-run team, very much like VR46. It's a family. And you don't get that in the factory Ducati team. Yeah, you get the Tardozzis and the, all those guys patting you on the back saying, don't worry. But then they're going around the corner and getting on the phone and saying, listen, do you want to maybe phone Jorge Martin? And, so it's a business more than a family. And Bezzecchi has made that decision. Can Bezzecchi step it up from what was a really good 2023? Mistakes were made. I remember Silverstone, a big one. I think he had just either got into first in the championship or close to first in the championship, and then he made that silly mistake on the brakes. So there's cracks in the armor of Bezzecchi. There's no doubt about it. But that was his 2nd season in MotoGP. This is his 3rd season now. Again, comfortable surroundings. He knows that package inside out. But is that going to come back to haunt him, the fact that he didn't take the latest spec? And we know certainly from years gone by, the latest spec Ducatis only get better halfway through the season. That's kind of where the older spec bikes can't keep up, because the new bikes are still developing at the beginning. Once they hit prime form is when the older bikes kind of fade away a little bit. And that's what Bezzecchi, Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, DJ Antonio, that's what they've got to deal with. I've lost Paul. I've been talking to myself because I'm looking at results. I wasn't even looking at the screen. Paul's gone. He's gone to bed. Load shedding. What's load shedding? What's load shedding? Crayfos said in a recent podcast that KTM is effing fast as Dukes on the straights. He means Ruan. But as I said earlier on the show, it's not about the top speed. Fabio Quartararo on the Yamaha was top speed. Guys nowhere. So Ducati, it's not about the top speed. It's not about the top speed. As Mariska says, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I dare you, do it. Well, while we wait for Paul to come back on. So just catch up with some comments here, actually. Stiggy, keep those comments coming in. Please do. This is an open conversation, and as I said, what you've brought up and said is fully warranted. Zama, Brad's comments on his feelings on the bike is reassuring. He can get close enough to the Duke's consistency, they'll undo each other and let him have the cake. Warren Roberts, these boys earn big money. Brad sorted for life with KTM. After he finishes up as a racer, guaranteed test rider role with wildcards. Warren, that's Brad's got that precision, that mentality, that patience to be another Danny Pedrosa. So, and I think KTM can see that, and that's why they invested in him, not just for what he's doing now for them, but in the long run, I think they can see him as a replacement. Look, Brad's 28 years old, 29 years old, whatever he is. I know I'm going to get a message from Trevor Binder now saying, how don't you know my son's age? I can't keep up with all these ages, and time's going so fast. But there's Brad's still got another good 10 years. The way that these guys look at Aleix Spargo, the way that these riders are looking after themselves mentally, physically, touch wood, nothing serious happens. Still a lot of racing left, a lot of racing life left in these riders. So yeah, Brad's is sorted with Kate. Brad's biggest decision he needs to make is if he thinks he reaches an end point with KTM and goes and does a Marc Marquez and goes, right, there's nothing more I can do here. I need to tick that what if box off. What if I go to Ducati? What if? So that's Brad's biggest hurdle that he's going to have to cross at some point. Olimoto, Binder will do very well to get fourth in the championship again. Bastianini and Marquez will be strong, along with Bagnaia and Martin. Olimoto, as much as I want to slap you as a South African and a Binder fan, it's warranted. It's absolutely warranted what you're saying. Ducati in the testing so far have taken it to another level, and Brad and KTM have to keep up with that. So it's going to be very difficult, very difficult. While we wait for Paul to come back, I've spoken about Bezzecchi. Staying with KTM, let's talk Jack Miller in 11th place in the testing. Hasn't been phenomenal in testing, Jack Miller. His comments have been positive. He's found something. Big year for Jack Miller. Big year. Pedro Acosta's there. There's already talk that Pedro's taken his ride. So there's a lot for Jack Miller to deal with. And we know he didn't deal with it very well when he was at Ducati. He got a 1-year contract. Jack needs security. Jack needs that cuddling environment. It's going to be a big year for Jack Miller. I love Jack Miller personally. He's a fantastic person. I love him. I think he's brilliant for KTM. I think he's brilliant for MotoGP. But you're paid to get results. Last year, unfortunately, consistently didn't get the results. So he needs to, if he wants to stay certainly in that factory KTM ride and in the championship. Whether 2025 we're going to see Jack Miller in gas colors. I don't know. I was going to mention it to Paul. It was going to be a topic of discussion. Is if there's a lot of riders to me that are on the chopping block, but who's going to replace them? Who's going to replace Maverick Vinales at Aprilia? Yeah, okay, potentially Fabio Quartararo, but does Aleix Spargo want to stand? Does Aprilia sacrifice Maverick for one more year of Aleix and take Fabio? There's not enough big names coming from Moto2 to fill these rides. The biggest one is probably Furman Aldeguer, and by the sounds of it, Ducati have got that sewn up. So the Jack Millers, the Miguel Oliveras, the Raul Fernandezes, all these guys. There's not enough coming up. Richard Walker, Darren Binder. I would love for that to happen. And Darren, in the interview, if you haven't checked it out, check out our YouTube channel. We've got the live interview we did with Brad and with Darren up there. But yeah, Darren's confident talking confident and wants to get back into MotoGP. So let's hope that he can. But it'll be a tough ask for Darren to flick that switch and go win Moto2 convincingly this year and warrant a MotoGP ride. To be honest, I think it's still a season or two away. We've got Paul back, it looks like, so I'm going to reintroduce Paul. Paul.
Rob, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. I do have a solar package here, and everything normally works, and everything just died. But it's all back on again, and I didn't do anything. So yeah, sorry about that.
So I was busy blabbing away talking about Bezzecchi. I didn't even know where I lost it because I had the results up on my screen, so I wasn't even looking. And then why is Paul taking so long to reply? And then there's no Paul. So I don't know where you got up to with the Bezzecchi argument.
Yeah, not too much, eh?
Okay, so in a nutshell, Bezzecchi snubbed a better bike, better deal with Pramac Ducati to stay in the environment that he's happy with. He said it in the there can only be one. I love this team. A happy family team to me is almost better than having a foster bike. And it's a big statement to make. I think it's the right statement. I think Bezzecchi's that kind of rider that, needs that kind of comfort zone. Bastianini, I think, is missing that with the factory team. I think the factory team, you've got, Tardozzi and all those guys saying, "Oh, don't worry," and then they'll go around the corner and get on the phone to Martin's manager and say, "Listen, prep him. This guy's not doing well." It's more of a business environment where VR46 Cressini is this family-run team. So Bezzecchi made that big statement, but we saw it last year. Start off really well on the older package because you've got all the data, you've got everything. Halfway through the year is when the older bikes seem to come into play. Obviously, the older packages, they're 2-year-old, compared to 1-year-old, or not even 6 months old in Pecco and them. So is that decision going to come back to haunt Bezzecchi? Can Bezzecchi replicate what was a brilliant 2023 for him? This is only his third season in MotoGP. He made big mistakes last year, but what is your take on the Bezzecchi?
Yeah, Rob, I think he made it. I was quite happy that he stayed at VR46 for reasons we discussed, the family environment, everything seemed to be working for him. If you have a look now, definitely Mark and the Gian Antonio on the older bike have been faster than him, and Alex Marquez mostly. So he's now the second slowest of the Ducatis, where last year he was third in the championship. So yeah, I think he's got a bit of pressure. I personally, there's been very little on the interwebs about his feelings of the testing. So we can't say, okay, he says this has happened and that's happened. I think he's been very quiet for the simple fact that he's been disappointed in himself, that suddenly everyone else has picked up the pace and it doesn't look like he's been able to match that. So I think he's under a little bit of pressure, and maybe he is going to rue that decision that he could have had a Johan Zarco bike to ride, and now he's on the older bike, saying that he was faster than Zarco, but still, not Zarco, obviously Morbidelli's gone. He could have had Zarco's bike. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I was expecting great things from him. I really thought 1, 2, and 3 from last year, whether the order changes, it's going to be difficult for Brad to break into that top 3. It's going to be difficult for whether it's Marc Marquez, the Gian Antonio. And all of a sudden, it looks like it's only the top 2 that are consistently fast. Yeah, Brad, I think he should be a shoe-in to fit into that 3rd place. But now what's happened to Bezzecchi? He's suddenly taken 2 steps back. Is he suffering from a bit of Maverick Vinales syndrome, that suddenly his head is now saying, oh, but you could have done that and you didn't? And, I don't know. We're going to see when the racing starts. One thing I will say, he's very good at racing. So he's also a bit of a Sunday guy. But this must play on your mind that last year you became one of the top 3. And now this year you're struggling in 11th place, So it's going to be a very difficult one. They're going to have to manage him properly to get him out of that. And he keeps looking at the Gian Antonio, who's just improving and improving. And now this is his teammate who actually nearly had no ride. He was almost back in Moto2, World Superbikes, whatever. And suddenly he's maybe getting a little bit more focused because he's the guy carrying the team at the moment. So I think he's going to have to deliver. He made that choice to stay there, and now he has to back it up. And at the moment, his teammates doing the backing up.
It's Warren Roberts makes a good comment here, is that we forget how young these riders are. I mean, Bezzecchi's 23, 24.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
if you go about, looking at Valentino Rossi and Aleix Spargo now, that's 15 more years of
yeah,
Bezzecchi and MotoGP. Or sorry,
yeah.
not 15. Yeah, it is 15. Yeah,
15,
39.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, it's
But
15 more years of the guy.
yeah, but in all fairness, it's, do you want to be an Alicia Spargo who started, is at 300 races, he's
Mm.
won 3, or do you want to be and he's missed that boat. I mean, this is his 3rd season and he's won 3 races. Yes, that's fantastic. It's 3 more, and my point's always 3 more than Colin Edwards did, and Colin Edwards was a superstar. But the current crop of MotoGP riders are just so competitive that time is almost a non-entity here, because
Mm, mm,
if you
mm.
miss one season, other people are there to take your ride, and you suddenly find yourself, like with Bezzecchi, struggling out of the top 10, which should never be happening with him. So I think it's going to be a very difficult season for him, unless, as I say, there wasn't much on the internet where we could comment and say, okay, but he said X, Y, and Z. And that worries me, that he's been so quiet.
Right.
That's why I think there's a problem in terms of he just cannot get the package right, the bike right. Maybe he's just not saying anything. He's not being a Jorge Martin and saying, oh, the bike's cuck and X, Y, and Z. I think that there's a problem there, because Gian Antonio has put out a lot of statements saying what he's happy with, saying what Pecco told him, X, Y, and Z. Bezzecchi, nothing. Silence. And to me, radio silence in this sport is never a good thing.
Well, you look at it last year, as I said, Pecco, initial thoughts with a GP23 machine was, it wasn't as good feeling under hard braking. Martin was the same. Bastianini took a while to get used to it, was also not really good in testing. Maybe, Bezzecchi's going through that trial and error process now of, yeah, okay, we've got all the settings or whatever, but my riding style, the feeling is just not there yet. So I think that will just progress over time and get better. There's no doubt about it. Bezzecchi is the talent that he is. So, but yeah, it's a question mark around that to see. When the lights go out, he is a racing man. He tends to kind of ride over things and can make things work. So there's pressure on all these riders. We say there's pressure on this guy and this guy. There's pressure on all of them to perform. But let's see how that if he'll come. If that decision will come back and bite him in the arse, not to go with later spec, better contract, better team. Let's see how that plays out. A comment made here, someone that's joining late, and it's a very good one, is, how does Marc Marquez, just quickly going back to Mark before we get into the Jack topic, which I've already started. What happens in the situation come the end of the year where Mark, cool, you're 4th in the championship or 5th. You're on a Ducati now. We've got, guys at the front. You've now got to play this Ducati game of help teammates or don't interfere, don't engage. Mark, do not engage and cause cuck. Mark's never had to deal with that. Mark's always been number one, and don't tell me what to do. I kind of make my own rules because I was Mr. Honda. Well, no. You're not. There's no such thing as Mr. Ducati. Pecco's in a way got Mr. Ducati, but you got to play a team game now, my son. So yeah, that's another thing for Mark to handle. There's so many things for Mark to actually handle that he's never experienced in his MotoGP career. As you said earlier, we forget the guy has been on one brand of motorcycle since he came into MotoGP. One. It's not like he tested a Ducati in other areas. The guy's ridden one MotoGP spec bike in his entire life. Yeah, it changed and it evolved and it whatever, but the DNA stayed the same. It's a completely different. It's actually a lot. It's actually a lot for me to take in. Never mind, Mark.
And I think, Rob, that's a valid point, because that applies to not just Mark. It could apply to Bezzecchi. It could apply to, Morbidelli if he's in with a shot, Gian Antonio. So where I think it's going to be a big problem is because of who Marc Marquez is.
Yeah.
He's an 8 times world champion. He's always been the number one rider. Now he's not. I think, me personally, I think the only person that he would actually, if the championship was on the line and he needed to make a call, the only one I think he would do it for is his brother. My opinion. I think the rest is like, but I don't care who you are. If I'm going to beat you, if I can beat you, I'm going to beat you. I don't care if you. He might be a little bit more reserved in the way he goes about it. He might not do a Marc Marquez do or die. overtake maneuver, but I certainly don't think, in my opinion, I don't think he's going to buckle under the pressure of, oh, but now you ride for Ducati, you do what Ducati says. I still think first and foremost, and as I say, I read that book about him. First and foremost, Marc Marquez looks after Marc Marquez, and he's open about it. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't say it in a way that is, I suppose it is arrogance, but he says, my job is to win a world championship. My job's not to go and cycle with Alicia Spargaro and have tea with whomever. So, yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out if it needs to. You know, if he's down in 10th in the championship, possibly different story. But like you say, if he's 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and he's, you know, that's still in with a good finish. Whoever made that point, that's a very valid point and something to watch, because it's not, as I say, it's not really going to affect an Alex Marquez or a Bezzecchi, because they're not Marc Marquez. So, yeah, interesting one, that.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's mind-blowing, actually, to think how this is going to play out. On to Jack Miller then. I've already kind of touched upon it. We've touched upon it many times. You know, yes, and a couple of people have said, yeah, but, you know, he made a big difference. He helped develop. He brought so many great ideas, and he did. And I love Jack Miller. I think he's a great addition to MotoGP. He brings that personality that I love, and I love it. But he's got that added pressure already. There's talk that he's lost his ride to Pedro Acosta. The season hasn't even started. Jack doesn't cope well with that kind of thing. We saw it at Ducati. He needs the comfort of a 2-year contract. And at the end of the day, no matter what you say, love him or hate him, whatever, MotoGP, no matter how much you've developed the bike, you're judged on results. You are paid for results, as you've said. And Jack Miller has not delivered the results. And it killed. You know, I get a bad taste in my mouth when I say that, because I don't want to speak badly about Jack. He's such a nice guy, and I want him there. But that's the reality. And the reality is, for him, more so than Brad, there's this Pedro Acosta coming. And this Pedro Acosta has a bit of Marc Marquez in him, where he's like, I'm not here to be Jack's friend or Brad's friend, or I want a factory ride, and I want to win championships and races. And that is the Pedro Acosta way. So Jack, it's a big season for Jack. And I was saying it's a big season for a lot of riders, but who's going to replace these guys? You know, we talk about Maverick and whatever. Who's going to replace these guys? I said that we spoke earlier on about Firmin Aldeguer. He's the only real one we can talk about. His contract seems to be done with Ducati already. Some people mentioned Darren Binder, which I'd love to see. You know, the reality of Darren going and winning next year's Moto2 emphatically to put himself in MotoGP, I would love to say is a reality, but the reality is it's a big ask. So yeah, you know, the Jack Miller, not really. He's had good testing. He's also come out with positive things to say, but by no means has come out as anywhere near close to the top KTM, or, you know, challenging at the top of the timesheets. I do kind of stress for Jack Miller that, you know, what's going to happen.
Yeah. You know, Robin, and points that you've made throughout our discussion and previous discussions, there's not a crop of 6 or 8 Moto2 riders looking for a ride in MotoGP. So that could be the saving grace, because we could probably say there's 6 riders in MotoGP currently whose rides are on the chopping block. Obviously, if one of them has a very good season, so let's say Jackie finds himself consistently in the top 8 or top 10, take him out of the equation. There are 5 rides left. The only shoe-in for next year is Aldeguer. Yeah, there could be 1 or 2 guys that step up to the plate, hopefully Darren being one of them. There's already talk with this Trackhouse Racing that Joe Roberts is being earmarked. So let's say Ralph Fernandez goes to Mavericks ride. That opens up 1 spot. It's an American-owned team. If Joe Roberts is having a reasonably good season, they're going to look at him before they look at a Darren Binder. So, you know, that's what's happening. But the point is that there's not 6 guys in Moto2 that are, well, we right there and we deserve that ride. There might be 2. So that could be the saving grace for a guy like Jack, because they might say, well, what do? We take I'm going to say an unknown quantity. Let's just say a Darren Binder or a Joe Roberts, and put him on the KTM. He's got very little experience or no experience. We've got Jack Miller, who's got 11 seasons of experience, won many races, can develop a bike. So do we just keep him? Pole's already moved on as a development rider, which I think was the right time. So what do they do? So that could be Jack's saving grace, could be Maverick's saving grace. and one or two other rounds. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. But the point you made is very valid. We haven't even started turning a wheel in anger, and Jack's been told that you got to perform because Pedro Acosta, who's been faster than you in all the testing, is ready for your seat. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be and if he is feeling a little bit insecure about the fact that he's on the second of his 2-year contract and he doesn't know where he's going, it's going to make him worse off. And KTM has said, Jack, stop worrying about that. Just get on the bike and do your job. But is he able to? So very interesting, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, he's one of the riders like Maverick and some of them as well that are, there's too much of this getting in the way. You look at the Brads, the Pecos, they seem to be able to shut this off, shut off that little thing that's in your ear jabbering, where some riders aren't able to do that. And Jax very much falls into that pot of riders that, lets this interfere too much. So there's a couple of really good comments on the side here. Someone mentioned, there is a lack of a lot of riders coming from Moto2. Does that open the door then for a Toprak who's looking at the top of his powers in World Superbikes at the moment on the BMW? If he goes and wins on a BMW and has a fantastic season, will Toprak be considered? I would still love to see that exercise. I would love to see that exercise. Whether or not it'll happen, I don't know. I think Toprak could, happily sit in World Superbikes and earn big money with BMW and be their blue-eyed Turkish boy. Then there's, of course, the other option for Jack is, there's two options for Jack in my mind. Obviously, step back into the gas team, because I don't think there'll be anyone else to really fill that. Augusto Fernandez, I worry about him. We'll talk about him later as well. Or, he's still got good ties with Ducati. Alvaro Bautista could be ending his time in World Superbikes, and Jack Miller could be Ducati's new answer in World Superbikes there. So, Jack, it won't be the end of Jack Miller. We know that. But as Ollie Moto still says, I can't see Jack Miller in factory colors next year. I can very much see Pedro Acosta alongside Brad in that team. I'm excited about Pedro Acosta. We'll talk about him just now, because he's going to bring more competition and more ideas to KTM. So anyway, that's ending on the Jack Miller comment or topic. In 12th place, Miguel Oliveira. Now, this is a big one that we're going to have to try and just shorten a little bit, because as I said, we've got a lot of Portuguese fans and we get a lot of stick sometimes when we dig into Miguel. But you have to, because he left KTM, and I don't think Oliveira is one to develop a bike either. He very much, when a bike's right, Miguel is super duper fast, and he proved it at Tech 3 KTM. He proved it at factory KTM, but he needs things to be right. And when they're not right, he just doesn't seem to be able to find an answer. And that's going to be to the detriment of Oliveira. Someone commented earlier saying Brivio, you were talking about how Brivio could be Raul Fernandez's answer. He could very well be Miguel Oliveira's answer. But it's a big season for Miguel now as well, because he's also been this kind of talked about in many ways as we do Maverick Vinales. The potential's there, the talent's there, but nothing's really transpired from it. So, yeah, it's a big season for everyone, but Miguel Oliveira's got to do something. Just has to.
Yeah, Rob, you've also got to wonder, over the past 2 seasons, most of the riders have had 2-year deals. So they've all been comfortable in year one, but year one goes by very quickly, and now we're into year 2. So like Oliveira, Jack, Raul Fernandez, Augusto Fernandez, so suddenly the pressure's ramped up, not just in terms of they have to get the results. That's what they paid to do. But now suddenly they're riding for their ride. So that's a little money key in the back of the head also. So you have a low side on lap 18 of 24 when you lead in the race, a la Jack Miller. And that little money key in the back of your head says, but you've just thrown away, whether it was first, second, or third, X amount of points, and the oak who wants your seat has finished the race. So it's added pressure. So those guys that we're talking about that are almost certain to be having to look for a different ride or hope like hell they can renew their rides, that just adds that little bit of pressure to them. So, and it seems to be the case that when, like Oliveira, he got tagged in, it was at the first race by Marquez. Then he was out for a while. Then he came back and he had someone crashed into, not his fault, but it just seems like when the luck's going against you, it can mount very quickly. And I think Oliveira's in a position now where he's certainly, we've seen it, 5 race wins. He's got the talent. He's got the speed. If the weather's inclement, he's one of the best without a doubt. But he's going to have to up his game week in and week out. And we're seeing that's become more and more difficult for one or two of the guys, where it's that constant pressure just doesn't dissipate at all. And you've got to absorb it. And a guy like Brad, Pecco, Mark in the old days, and hopefully this year, they can absorb that pressure better than some of the other guys. Speed-wise, we know, Rob, they're all much of a muchness.
Yeah.
It's those 0.1% that detract from your overall score, if we want to call it that, and that's the difference. And when you've got these things playing on your mind at the same time, yes, I can't understand what that pressure must be like for a guy. This is your career, and suddenly you're doing the best that you think you are capable of doing, and sometimes it's not good enough. So, Oliveira, Miller, Maverick, quite a few of them, they're all in the same boat, but could have terrible consequences at the end of the year for some of them. So, I don't know how it's going to pan out. Results are the only thing. Like you say, doesn't matter who you chommies with. At the end of the day, it gives you a score of 25 or down to 1, and it depends where you fit in that line as to what's going to happen for next year.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with that comment of, riders like Oliveira, Jack, when they make those mistakes, it seems to play on them, and they seem to hang on to it like, oh God, I've made this mess, and it like goes for 2 or 3 races and they just can't get out of it, Whereas the Brads and the Peccos are able, especially the Peccos, are able to shut off and go, right, reset, I made a mistake, move on. The Miguel, the Jack, they hold on to it a bit more. So it's exactly what you said there is 100% correct how you analyzed Miguel Oliveira, Maverick, and Jack Miller in that sense, is that they do. It's this, it's my livelihood on the line. I'm supposed to be the best and I'm not the best. Oh no, you know what I mean? Panic mode sets in, and they aren't able to deal with that panic mode, whereas other riders are better equipped to handle that. And that's the difference. As you said, they can all ride a motorcycle fast. They know that. It's as you said, how they deal with that scorecard at the end of the day and how they react to certain situations. That's the difference. So we'll say it again. It's going to be an interesting season. Fabio Quartararo, speaking of those kind of riders that have too much of this, in 14th place, has had nothing but negative comments about Yamaha. It's not even, we found something, but we're still working hard. It's straight, we are not good enough. We are miles off. They've got the top speed. It means nothing. So Fabio, to me, has switched off from that project. I said it last year. I think Fabio is going, every time he swings his leg over that bike, he's just hoping something miraculous happens. And this Ducati-like motorcycle is all of a sudden created under him and he can go fast. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with Yamaha anytime soon. And he's, at a very young age, lost that patience already. He's also like, come, I want to go. I don't want to hang around. I don't want to develop bikes. I don't develop bikes. It's not what I do. And I don't think he can. I'm not here to develop bikes. I want to go. And Yamaha aren't where Fabio Quartararo is. So I can't see much happening for Fabio this year. Obviously, there'll be 1 or 2 good rides because he's a rider that can dig deep. And when the odds are against him, he's able to, ride at 200% and make something happen. The problem is with the Yamaha making something happen with the depth of field that it is at the moment, that digging deep now is no longer a 3rd place. It's a 5th, 6th at best. And this is what Fabio is going to have to come to terms with. If they can't find that pink unicorn to go fast on that Yamaha, he's going to have to somehow not throw his toys out the cot, be mature about it, accept it, try and do his best every race meeting, and hope that there's something coming in 2025, whether it be with another manufacturer or with Yamaha, something.
Yeah, I just hope he hasn't fallen into comparing to Maverick Vinales when Maverick was at Yamaha, that mindset that no matter what I do, this bike is rubbish. It's not going to get any better, and I'm going to jump off it and just throw it into the bushes and be done with it. Exactly. Worries me that because, like you say, every comment has been negative. Every comment has been, I won't say derogatory, but he's certainly not in a good headspace. Like you say, he didn't say one positive thing. So I'm just going to highlight 2 little things quickly that I found out. First of all, at the Sepang test, there was a meme going around that said, thank heavens Yamaha brought Alex Rins to the test because it's the only new thing they've brought with, which I understand that was a bit harsh. But then you must listen to, and you probably have met him, Matt Oxley. Do you know him? He's a
Yeah, yeah,
journalist.
yeah.
Listen to his podcast. He was in the garage at Yamaha at Sepang. He said Yamaha took so much stuff, way more than anyone else, which I was quite surprised to hear. Because if you listen to Fabio Quartararo, it's as if they gave him the bike from last year. If you saw, they put some of those Stegosaurus wings on the tailpiece and said, have a nice day, go ride and have some fun. According to Matt Oxley, because he was in the back of the garage doing an interview with Cal Crutchlow, and he said, you cannot believe how much stuff Yamaha have brought to this test. That was Sepang. Eh? Then he said, and listen to the podcast, it's brilliant. Yamaha have poached the head aerodynamicist from Ducati.
Yeah.
They've poached Ducati's top electronics oak, and they poached the top engine builder from Ferrari. Now, if that doesn't mean that going forward, Yamaha aren't taking this very seriously, then I don't know what is. Now, surely Fabio knows that. And he can, instead of slagging everything, he can say, listen, Oaks, we're going to get there. We need to look here. But we're heading. Now, I mean, those three people that Yamaha have bought are three of the top in their field. And it just sounds like they are taking this way more serious than maybe Fabio is. So I don't know. They read into it what you want. That was Matt Oxley, who's been a journalist in MotoGP for, I'm going to say, 30 years. So he's got insight and he knows what he's talking about. And he was the one saying, Yamaha are taking this project so seriously. Now, that's a little bit of behind the scenes that we don't see or hear. And then we get all at the same time, all you're seeing on the internet is the negative comments from Fabio. And you're like, yes, Yamaha just aren't interested. So maybe the problem is with the rider and not so much with the bike. Yes, I understand he wants a bike that can win. But he's got what he's got and he needs to move forward as much as we say everyone else needs to. He's an ex-world champion on a bike that he was happy to sign a multi-year deal with. Deal with what you've got. So I don't know. Let's see how that pans out. I'll keep saying that, but I think it's got into his head too much. When I heard this podcast that Yamaha are throwing cash and resources to make it better, and you listen to him, you'd think you were in two different worlds. So yeah, I don't know, Rob. Difficult one to overcome, eh?
I think he's got into that Marc Marquez mentality now where he doesn't have the patience. So as I said, he goes out and he wants to, and when he can't go fast, you see Fabio go back to the Petronas days where he gets and he hits the tank and he's turned into that child again. I think his problem is actually the Marc Marquez move. I think if he sees Marc perform, he's going to go, I have to do that. He's it's going to be, well, there's the exercise playing out right in front of my eyes. Marc left a project that needs time to rebuild and he's competitive. And that's and I think he's already gone there, Fabio. And exactly as you said there now, I know Yamaha, they have to. Yamaha's company, Yamaha's reputation, Yamaha's name is on the line. For Yamaha to go and spend huge money on an Italian aero designer, not a Japanese. I mean, it's unheard of. They are doing the right things. Alex Rins, I think, has been a good signing. He came back from a bad injury. He had a terrible 2023. Yes, he won on the All-CR Honda, but other than that, it was a terrible year. He's got to find himself, get himself sorted before he can even start thinking about piecing this Yamaha together. And I think that's where Yamaha are. It's Yamaha in a way could do without Fabio at the moment, just like Honda can do without Marc. If you know what I mean. It's like, right, we don't need someone pushing us out the door, rushing us. We don't need that. We need this calm, collective, and we'll talk about him just now. And that's where I think Honda have made probably the best signing in Marini. I never thought it was, but the more I look at it now, it is. But Fabio trying to rush that project is the worst thing that can happen. And coming out the way that he's talking, Lynn Jarvis or someone needs to get hold of him and say exactly what you said. Listen, we won you a world championship. Don't forget that. You signed a multi-year deal with us. Yes, there were terms and conditions that we've got to improve, but we're trying. Give us. You can't expect us to pull rabbits out of hats. This is the real world, my friend. And in fact, you're going faster than you've ever gone before, are you not? Yes. It's not our fault that Ducati are, changing the goalposts every time. We're trying. we're trying. Just hang on a bit. But I don't think Fabio wants to, and it's sad to see. I think he wants that route out, and I think once the Mark, the first time Mark wins at a Ducati, I think Fabio's going to, and Fabio's his own manager now, so he doesn't even call it team manager. He's going to be on the phone to Aprilia or wherever and go, right, I'm ready to sign.
But does he have the bargaining power? That would be my question. Yes, he won a world championship. I'm questioning, does he have the bargaining power? I'm not convinced. I'm not detracting from his world championship, the wins that he's had. He certainly is a talent. But does he have that bargaining power? I don't know. So if he has a fraught season, he's not going to be the first in line to get a Ducati if someone moves on, in my opinion. Obviously, he can market himself very well. He'll have to be able to do that. And I think his best bet will be to get on an Aprilia. I don't think KTM will even look at him. I don't think there's space there. So that's the other side of the coin. Does he have the bargaining power to be all snotty and I don't care what you do at Yamaha, I'm out of here, and then run with his CV to Ducati and say, I won a world championship in 2020. You need to take me now. Look how good I am. And they'll say, but you're 14th in the championship. So that would be my concern with him. He mustn't blow smoke up his own backside at this moment in time to other companies. Maybe try and be a little bit more proactive within the Yamaha fold. I hear what you're saying, and I can understand his mindset, especially if Mark does well on the Ducati. Because I do believe the situations are very similar in that Mark gave up and said, I'm out of here. But Fabio is not Mark Marquez.
No.
Does he have that bargaining power? And especially, one thing about Mark, he told you what the problem was with the Honda, but he never badmouthed it. He said, we're doing everything we can to make the project better. Fabio's just tuning this bike shit, and I don't know what we're going to do. So he's in a negative headspace at the moment. And, other teams also look at that. And then you get another Maverick Vinales who once he gives up properly. And, we're not even at the first race yet. So, yeah, a very difficult situation for him to be in, difficult for the team too, because now they got to manage this guy. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. And I've said it before. I think part of the problem is Lynn Jarvis. I'm glad to hear what Yamaha are doing, but I've said it before. I think it's time that he moves on. Just how I feel about him. I've never been a big fan of his. I just think he doesn't come across as a David Tardozzi, who has so much enthusiasm just oozing out of him, or a Davide Brivio, who you can see is that focused but calm demeanor. Lynn Jarvis, to me, just he forgot a personality when he was created. So, yeah, I don't.
Oli Moto brings up a good question that, I think the problem with Fabio as well, I think he's already eyed the Aprilia ride. It's been spoken about. We speak about it. I think he already knows. Internally, these guys learn a lot more. He already knows Alesia's may be leaving. He knows that ride is going to be available, and I think his mind's already shifted there. But Oli Moto says, interestingly, if Fabio does leave Yamaha, what do Yamaha do? Yamaha documented that they wanted Aldeguer. Looks like they've lost Aldeguer. Why would an Aldeguer want to go into his first season in MotoGP on a project bike when he could climb on a Ducati and do a Martin in many ways? So who do they get there? Oli Moto says, does Joan Mir, end it with Honda and say, what, this exercise hasn't worked, and I don't think it is going to work, to be honest. And he climbs onto the Yamaha, which I think will be better suited to him, and then he's reunited with Rins. That partnership that they had at Suzuki, that was very good. So there's so many factors involved. It's not just a case of, oh, well, Vinales and all these riders are leaving and these guys are going to replace. Exactly what we've been saying. There's a lot to think about. And Fabio, as you said, has got to sit there and go, well, you must understand, you're not the hot property you were 2 years ago. And every time you open your mouth the way you do in the press, me as a team owner or a team boss, certainly at Tardozzi and them, I think we'll look at that and go, do we really want this guy? Do we want the headache of this guy in our team? When we've got a queue of riders, we've got Bezzecchi's waiting, we've got DJ Antonio's waiting, we've got Martin's waiting, we've got potentially Brad Binder's waiting, we've got potentially, you know what I mean? It's not like it's not that there's lack of ideas or and that for them. Nicolo Bulliga in World Superbikes is, let's see what season he has. So yeah, it's Fabio. I'm disappointed in Fabio. I like Fabio. I think he's great. I love a lot about Fabio, but so far he's let me down, and I haven't been too impressed with the way he's going around. Because as you said, and I said, to me, he's already given up. which is
Yeah.
madness to think the season hadn't even started.
Yeah.
But anyway, behind him in the times in 15th place is Pedro Acosta. Now people are going to look at this and say everyone's raving about Pedro Acosta, but he's in 15th. Sepang test he was a little bit better. What I'm so amazed about is even at the Sepang test how quickly this guy went fast. This guy, after even at this Qatar test, he was ahead of Brad almost straight away. And this is a kid who went to Qatar for the first time on a MotoGP bike. He ends the test in 15th with a 1:52 dead lap time, which is 1 second off Pecco Bagnaio's fastest lap time. Now, you think back to any rookie, including our very own Darren Binder, who climbed straight into MotoGP. Yes, Darren's situation was different, Moto3 to MotoGP. But normally rookies are, what, 2.5 seconds off, these early tests. Pedro Costa finished 1 second off the fastest lap time ever done at Qatar.
Yeah.
So when you dive deeper into the Pedro Costa and you look at the sectors and how fast he went so quickly and how he maintained that time and his overall race pace and actually only being a second off, it is incredible what this kid's doing. It is.
And understanding that he's not on a Ducati.
Yeah.
So, if you said he's 1 second off and he's on the best bike, okay, so that's okay. He's on the KTM stroke gas. And we've seen that it's not the same as a Ducati. And as you say, this is the best Ducati rider setting the best time. And he's not that far behind. And he's had 7 days on the bike. That's the other story. Bagnaio's been in MotoGP. This is now his 6th season, if I remember correctly. Pedro Acosta, his fastest time was set on his 7th day on the bike. Yeah, he's a phenomenon. There's no doubt. Unfortunately, it's another Spanish rider coming through the ranks that's at some point, he's going to dominate. And I said it last year, it worries me that in 2 or 3 years' time, when Brad moves on, which is going to happen, if Pedro Acosta is still in the KTM team, all the work that Brad has done in the last 4 seasons, Acosta is going to benefit from it. But that's racing, that's life. But certainly this kid can ride. He's good. He's competitive. He's got a guy called Luthwaite. Something that's his crew chief.
Yeah.
Old guy, been in the business. Been in the business a long time. Says Pedro Acosta for a 19-year-old is the most mature oak he's ever dealt with.
Yeah.
And that's cool heads prevail, boy, and that's how you want your rider to be. You don't want him to be a Raul Fernandez from 2 years ago, as hot-headed as can be as a 19 or 20-year-old. So, big things are going to come from Pedro Acosta. There's absolutely no doubt. And even if it does take him a season to fully settle down, which I think he'll be way better than that. I think it's going to take him 3 or 4 races. He's certainly the future of MotoGP. He's 19. Imagine when he's 25, he'll have 7 seasons or 6 seasons under the belt. He's going to be, barring any injury, he's going to be almost unbeatable.
And I just like the way he goes around, like his press and his debriefs. He doesn't get hyped up about things. He stays very calm and relaxed. Again, doesn't have bad things to say. Keeps it all nice and scripted. He really is. You wouldn't think he's 19. To throw a 19-year-old into that environment of MotoGP, the travel, the money that's involved, it's you could understand him kind of just falling off the rails a bit. He really is mature, and I love how Marc Marquez comes out, and maybe I don't know. I always look at Marc Marquez when he comes out with comments like this and thinks, right, what's the plan? What's the play here behind this comment where he came out and he said, "Oh yeah, Pedro Acosta can win the championship like I did in my rookie season, or be as fast as I was in my rookie season." I look at that at Mark and I go, "You clever little bugger." Is it he's getting too much attention? And come now, think about me. I've moved to Ducati. I'm the man. Forget that spotlight there. Move it back here. Is it already trying to just play mind games with Pedro and say, "Listen, Lighty, I won in my rookie season. Let's not forget that, against the Rossies and the whoever else were there, Lorenzo's and. So don't think you're hot stuff here." Or is it just Mark saying, "You know what? Yeah, the kid's good. Well done." So I always like to dive deeper into that and pull the genetic side out of it. But there's no doubt a lot of the riders have come out and said, "You know what? You have to take your hat." For what he's done in the testing so far and how well he's adapted to the bike. And you even watch the videos of him. It looks like he's been a MotoGP rider for years. I actually forget he was a Moto2 rider when I watch
Yeah,
the
yeah,
highlights, and I'm like, this guy just fits on that bike and that riding style, and that's what I was saying earlier. I'm excited at it because it's going to push Brad. You know, if Pedro's ahead of Brad on the timesheet, Brad's going to go faster. He's going to bring a different element to it. You know, well, we couldn't get this set up right. Well, Pedro's doing this and it's working. Okay, well, maybe, you know what I mean? Kind of like what Jack did to Brad early on, and Brad, you got better and Jack wasn't able to. I think it's a good thing. I do worry about it. Of course, I don't want Pedro Acosta, you know, going ahead of Brad and becoming the number one rider in the team. I don't think that'll happen this year. You know, next year, I think Brad's still the guy to beat there. But it's good competition, and Brad thrives on that competition. I saw it last year with Jack. Brad thrives on the fact that you want to come in and take my spot. Good luck. You know, it's that Springbok mentality that you got to somehow bury me. If you want to make that happen, you've got to dig a hole and put me in it, and I'm going to climb out of it again. So it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant for the whole KTM project and for Brad. Moving on to Alex Rins. We've kind of spoken about it. For Rins, it's just a case of recovery for now, learning a new package. But I think in terms of Yamaha, I don't think they could have anyone better on the grid currently in terms of, right, sit, relax, help us. This is where we are. Realize where we are. Alex Rins is not going, he's not coming out saying, no, I want to win races and I want to compete for the championship, which Fabio is still doing unrealistically. Alex is going, there's a project here. We've got to work here. And again, 16th on the timesheet, yes, doesn't make for good reading, but only 1.1 seconds off the fastest time ever around Qatar, and 0.1 off your teammate that's been on Yamaha his whole life.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. One thing I read, I'm sure you saw the comment, which I was quite surprised to hear, because Frankie Morbidelli comes across as quite a pleasant, friendly guy. Quartararo said in the 3 years they were teammates, they didn't speak to each other once. I'm sure he was exaggerating a little bit, but he did say he's spoken more to Rins in the 3 tests last year's 2 days and the 5 than he did the whole 3 years with Morbidelli. Now, I don't know if, read into that what you want. I just think maybe, as we were saying, if Quartararo is in that negative headspace, maybe a guy like Rins who comes across as very, we'll do what we got to, be calm, we'll race, but don't take it too seriously kind of attitude. Maybe that will help Quartararo. And he's got someone he can talk to. So maybe now he can go to Rins and say, listen, I see in sector 3, you are doing X, Y, and Z, and you point 2 faster than me. Help me. Maybe that'll benefit him. I think that could be a good thing. I think that's going to be going back to Brad and Pedro Acosta. I think that's where they're really going to up the game. Because if there's one place where Pedro is faster than Brad, they're going to pool their resources. And Brad, like you said, he'll just go faster then because he knows it can be done. The bike is capable. So I think that'll be good. But maybe with Rins in the garage at Yamaha, he'll be that effect that which Quartararo didn't have, which he said he didn't have with Morbidelli. They just didn't talk to each other. Why, I don't know. But maybe that'll help him having Rins, someone he can bounce ideas off with at least, and say, okay, what do we do? Maybe that'll help him. I don't know. I don't know if you read that thing where he said.
Yeah, I did see it. And I know, Morbidelli very much keeps to himself in the paddock. He's a guy that you very rarely see. He's the forgotten man of MotoGP, and it is. I think he's a very reserved kind of guy. And yeah, he is. He very much is. So, I don't think it was anything personal or anything. It's just the way Morbidelli is. But as you said, I think Fabio could benefit from having a Rins that's like, hey, listen, what are we doing? What, getting him more involved.
A bit more engaging,
Yeah, exactly. So I think as I said, it's the best signing that Yamaha could have made. And just behind him, and we're going to kind of sum up Honda here because they're 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. Honda, which is always a good indication of exactly where the package is,
absolutely.
Together. But Johann Zarco is the new man to Honda. He's in that beautiful Castrol Honda livery. It's just absolutely fantastic in the LCR team. He was the fastest Honda rider in 17th, 1.2 seconds off. Nakagami in 18th, 1.4 seconds off. Jean Mir in 19th, 1.5 seconds off. And Marini in 20th, 1.7 seconds off. So Zarco, I think, is a good signing. I didn't think so last year when it happened because I was like, How's that going to work? Does he have the energy to kind of go at this project? How do you go from a Ducati where you had everything and you could ride at 90% and get away with things and you were competitive no matter what because you want a competitive package? How do you, at his age and been there for so long, find the energy now to go on this Honda project? So far in testing, he seems like he's brought some good information, some good feedback. Certainly been one of the fastest Honda riders so far. But yeah, again, just like Rins, I think the right kind of rider with the right kind of headspace. And you know what? I'm at that point in my career where I know I'm not going to win the champ. I'm not going to be a MotoGP world champion. It's fact now. Zarco knows that. But he knows I've got experience, I've got knowledge to help this project go forward. So, the more I look at it now, the more I think, you know what, actually a really good signing.
Yeah, I was happy when Honda signed him last year. I did say I thought they should have grabbed Aldersgate, build the project, start with him. Then they took Marini, could be a good step. He's been a little bit hot and cold. At times he's done nicely, but then he hasn't. Also, not too far off on the timesheets. But both Zarco and Marini saying our race pace is better than our one-lap pace. But they need the one-lap pace to qualify, because if you're qualifying in 18th, you're not going to beat Brad Binder qualifying in first, second, or third. I can tell you right now, no matter how good you are. So that's still a concern for Honda. I think they're going to struggle again. They're going to have one or two fair results. Whether someone can pull a rabbit out of the hat at Kota and win like Rins did last year, I can't see it happening. There are just too many competitive Ducatis. Marc Marquez on a Ducati at Kota and Sachsenring almost should be a given that he's going to win. So yeah, it'll be very difficult for them. But it seems like they've got four guys who are, okay, I'm going to say three, because remember before we were on air, I couldn't even remember the Oak's name, the Japanese Oak. I don't know why they've kept him. I understand that he's bringing money clearly from Indometsu, but other than that, I mean, he's just nowhere. So, but the three European riders seem to be gelling nicely, and I'm presuming Nakagami too. But his days are. I hope his days are over. So yeah, let's see how they go. I think they're going to be fighting like last year with Yamaha to finish at the back of the grid consistently. Then we've got Augusto Fernandez, who's just, I don't know, fallen off the wagon. But yeah, the Hondas, as much as they're quite confident, I think that's just saying what they want the press to hear, because the timesheets, as much as they're not too far behind, they're still the last four of the full-time riders except for Augusto Fernandez.
Well, Mir was praising the efforts and the progression that they made at the Sepang test, and it looked better there. But this is where the Ducati is so good, is that consistently it goes to every single track and performs. And Yamaha can't say that, Honda can't say that, Aprilia can't say that, KTM can say it a lot more than the others. And this is where Honda fail, and this is where Joan Mir is not the man for that kind of project for me as well. I don't think he's a rider that can develop. I don't think he's a rider that can find solutions and answers. And that's why I don't think he's going to last much longer there. I don't think he's going to have a particularly good season. Whereas I look at Marini, and again, Marini, factory Honda, really? The more I look at it now, good move. Because again, Honda were pushed, and they were stressed with Marc Marquez, because he just, I want to go. They couldn't sit and just relax, and there were demands from Marc, and so now there's this relief, and Honda have opened up resources, have opened up money. Now that Marc's left, yes, they've lost an 8-time world champion, their golden boy, but they've got to deal with that. And in Marini, very much like Zarco, Marini, even though he's young and whatever, he's mature enough to know that I'm not going to be a MotoGP world champion. Even when I was on a Ducati, I wasn't going to be a MotoGP world champion. If I'd stayed on Ducati another season like I was potentially going to lose my ride in 2025 and not have any ride. Whereas now, factory Honda, cool, I'm gone. More money, factory. He always said, Repsol Honda was a team I loved. But I look more at Marini as a rider now as well, and I think he's got that calming nature that Honda needs. I think he's got that patience that he needs. He doesn't force anything. If he goes out on track and he doesn't feel the bike there, he's not going to go put it in the barriers and blow millions for something that wasn't there, whereas Mark would go push all the time. Marini sensible enough to go, bike's not feeling great, I'm not going to throw it down the road, let me bring it in. And so he's got this calming patience about him that I think Honda needs right now, and Yamaha. And Marini and Zarco are those two riders to bring it. As you said, Nakagami is surely got to be on his final legs, and Mir, looking at Olimoto saying, I could see him landing up at Yamaha if Quartararo was to leave.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it's going to pan out. How they progress with the bike going forward, who they're going to listen to. Are they going to pool their resources towards Marini, or are they going to look at Zarco and look at him? I think what they're going to do is see who's, after maybe 4 or 5 races, who's done better and maybe head in that direction. How they work, I don't know. Marini also, I was very surprised that they signed him. I thought they would have done better to go with a Gian Antonio. But when you read all the behind the scenes stuff, Marini is very analytical, very calm, a very mature head on young shoulders. So maybe that was a good move, and he's going to maybe get this project heading in the direction it needs to go in. Honda have also hired and fired left, right, and center. So they also, like with Yamaha, they're taking this very serious. But I think they've realized it's not even a 2024 project. This is, if they're lucky, next year, but probably in all likelihood, a 2026, if everything comes together, that they can now start looking at winning consistently. They might get lucky once this year like they did last year. I can't see it happening, but I would never have said it would have happened last year anyway. So, let's see how it pans out. But I also think that Mir won't do any more than this season on the Honda, and then he'll look for, he might even be happy to say, well, I'm done, whether he goes to World Superbikes or he just throws in the towel, because we've seen it, Rob. How many riders have ended their career on this Repsol Honda? There've been more than one.
Mm-hmm. And he's spoken about it before. I mean, there was talk last year that maybe do I just hang it all up? Mir doesn't seem to have that. He's passionate about bike racing and he loves it, but he doesn't seem to have that die-hard like Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez and those kind of personalities like that. This is my everything. This is my life. Mir seems to have that. Well, if it's not working, you know what? It's a lot of training. It's a lot of energy. I'll just go elsewhere. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. The last one to talk about to end off, Augusto Fernandez. Now I worry about Augusto. Yes, he had a couple of great rides last year. Good, solid rider. I just think now, we were talking earlier about Marc Marquez keeping up with the pace that MotoGP's gone to. I can't see Augusto keeping up with the pace. I think he reached a level last year, and I don't think he can step it up, if you know what I mean. Especially with Pedro Acosta as your teammate now, just beating you week in and week out and being, a second faster than you or half a second, just always being beaten down. So, yeah, I think there'll be one or two good rides thrown in, maybe with other riders crashing, but overall, I think Augusto Fernandez is more than often going to find himself closer to the tail end and potentially out of MotoGP come 2025.
Yeah, look, they won't show it because they're going to be racing at the back of the field predominantly, but him and Nakagami could have a good season together, racing one another for 19th and 20th. Yeah, I agree with you there, Rob. I think he's out of his depth. We all had, I really, when they signed him, I thought, no, this kid can ride. He's gonna show us what he's capable of, and it just hasn't come to fruition. The pressure, the level of intensity, the level of concentration that is required, and you've said it so often, it's not a one race championship. You got to be able to do this and deal with everything, the media, the pressure, the odd crash, the weather, the traveling, for 20 weekends of your year. That's over basically half the year. Take into account the testing. It's a hell of a lot of pressure. And if you're struggling normally, just now they've had a break. Now he jumps on the bike and he's at the back of the field. So come next weekend when we start racing, he gets there with the mindset, I was last of the regular guys. That's not a great place to start. Mir was ahead of him, and Mir missed half the race or half the day because he was vomiting and I presume a bit of food poisoning or something. It makes it very difficult. So, the front 5 or 6, and we keep harping on the mental side. I think that's the difference between the top 6 and maybe everyone else. Yeah, and the bike too. But when you're struggling down in 14th, 15th, 16th place, and you see your teammate Pedro Acosta, Brad Binder on the same equipment, running a second and a half faster than you, and you think you're at the limit, it's very difficult. It's very demotivating, and it's going to make it a very challenging year for a guy like him. And
Yeah.
He's going to have to really stand up straight, broaden his shoulders if he wants to prove a point, because he's got pressure. Having Acosta as your teammate, Brad's got no pressure from Acosta except scoreboard pressure.
Yeah.
Augusto Fernandez has to room with the guy, so to say. They're going to be in the same box. That's pressure. You look across at a guy who's the brand new kid on the block, and he might be going a second a lap faster than you. Gets in your head very quickly. I don't care how tough you are mentally. Gets in your head, and he hasn't had a great start.
No. Paul, that brings us to the end of what has been a fantastic conversation, as always. Very insightful from your side, from everyone. All the comments have been brilliant. Down the side, been a whole conversation in itself down the side. So that's exactly what the show is about, and it's been fantastic. One thing I do want to do is put our money down. So I've got £10, which is about 15.5 million rand.
Million rand, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say my top 3 prediction is Pecco, Brad, DJ Antonio, and that's my honest. That's my reality. My heart will be Brad all day long. Before Trevor Binder throws his phone South African and hits me in the head. Yeah, realistically, I think it's going to be Pecco, Brad, DJ Antonio.
So you don't even put Martin in the top 3?
No, I don't. I don't. He suffered a bit last year at Qatar as well with tire. He had an out of round tire or whatever. I just think it's a kind of track with so many corners, and his attitude to go flat out all the time, with those track conditions, I think he doesn't have the management.
So I'm jumping the gun. Yeah, I thought you were talking championship. You're talking about first race.
No, first race.
Qatar. Okay. No. Then that's not a bad call. I'm going to go with Bastianini. He's won there before. I'm going to say Binder second, and I'm going with the Gian Antonio, and I'm going to go Marc Marquez third. I definitely think, I'm not going to be surprised if Brad wins, but I'm going to say Bastianini purely because he won there not last year, the year before. So yeah, let's see how he goes. I hope that, if we start off, and my worry is we start off with Pecco winning the race, it just puts him in such a headspace that he's not a flamboyant, I'll beat you all kind of guy. But in his head, he'll be like, I've got this championship, not in an arrogant way. It'll just make him so confident, because he's already so confident, and he's so smooth, and he's so meticulous, methodical. I would just like to not see him win, for the simple fact I want to see him under pressure. Martin, exactly what you say, win or bin. He's either going to win by 5 seconds, or he's going to be in the sand pit. Let's see what happens. But yeah, I'm going to stick to that. Bastianini, Brad, and I'm going to go with Mark for third.
So Wayne Taylor goes Pecco, the Beast, Brad. Olimoto said, I thought you were also talking about the standings. He went with Pecco. Francois Coetzee, Francois Messien, what say you? Pecco, Anea Bastianini, Brad. So yeah, a couple of people going the factory Ducatis and Brad. Warren Roberts, love it. Brad Binder, 33, love it. Olimoto, Banyaya, Martin, Marquez. Paul.
Listen, Brad's always fast at Qatar. Eh? Brad's always fast.
That's why I put him on the podium, and I only didn't put him for the win purely because that Ducati has just got that little bit extra for now.
And I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons. That's for the race.
Yeah.
One place for the sprint. I'm going to say the Gian Antonio is going to win the sprint.
There you go. Either way, Paul, whenever I sit on the couch late at night, I put YouTube on, and I see anything MotoGP, and I get this kid-like smile on my face. You've got it there right now, and I'm sure everyone in the comments has got it as well. So it's going to be fantastic. I absolutely cannot wait. Robin Kenwood, first race, Marquez blows them in the weeds if he doesn't fall off.
Yeah, but you can't have an if. It's like when you apologize to someone and then you say, but. No, there can be no if. The other wins, or you don't put him as a winner.
Exactly. Listen, cannot wait, as Olimoto says, and Francois Coetzee, everyone else, cannot wait. So, Paul, we've got to wait a couple of weeks still, and then we'll do our chat after the race, which I think is going to be so entertaining. I think so much going to happen, not only in the first race, but the entire season. Either way, MotoGP is stronger, better, faster than it's ever been. There's so much to talk about, and we're going to have a fantastic season together. Me, you, special guests, and everyone in the comments as well. So stay tuned to Motorrider World. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, share this far and wide. And until, sadly, we've got to wait a couple of weeks. But until then, World Superbikes to enjoy on the weekend. I'm away on work for the whole of next week, so try and squeeze in a talking World Superbikes maybe at some stage. But at least we've got a little bit of track action to keep us entertained until the big one, MotoGP. Francois Toprak, Phillip Island World Superbikes has always been great. And talking about MotoGP and how exciting that is, World Superbikes. Toprak BMW, Ray Yamaha, Alvaro Bautista 7 kilos heavier, Bulliga World Supersport champion, Andrea Iannone the return, the Lowe's brothers. I mean, it's just
a quick question: Is Ray gonna ride? Because he had a big crash. He's beaten up proper.
Yeah, he's hurt himself. The last I heard today was that he's going to give it a go tomorrow, which is probably right now as we're talking, and see. But yeah, it's a pity that's happened. I hope he is fully fit, because I want to see him go for it. I'm a huge Ray fan.
I think it's going to be Bulliga, Toprak, and Bautista for that championship. Bulliga's been a surprise. Gee whiz, he won the 600 class, super sport class. But before that, in MotoGP, for someone who had so much potential, he just didn't live up to it. And suddenly he's found his feet in World Superbikes.
And the thing is, it's the same discussion as Pedro. He's setting the fastest lap times ever seen on World Superbikes, and his first time on World Superbikes. So it's going to be fantastic. Olimoto, hopefully I definitely will see you at Donington World Superbikes this year. So I'll see you there. So yeah, Paul, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, sort your solar panels out, and we'll chat to you very soon. And big thank you to everyone for tuning in, and have a great week further, and we'll chat to you all very soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, Rob, and good night, everyone. Cheers.